Welcome back. This is the October edition 2024 of NMRAx. I'm Speed. I've escaped from the helix. We're here at the Red River RPM in Forest Hill, which is way closer to Fort Worth than anywhere else in the world. Our first presentation today is with the chairman of the next NMRA National Convention, Station Number 6, 2025. He is an MMR with a long history of service to the NCR region. He was also chairman of the Tri-Regional Convention in Indianapolis in 2022. He is a modeler of the Great Northern Railway and is very active in the Great Northern Historical Society. He models the GN in the Cascade Mountains in 1955 and enjoys timetable and train order operations. Doing most of the talking, however, is the chief registrar for the convention, as well as assistant superintendent for Division 6, the Motor City Division in the North Central region. He returned to model railroading in 2015, having built his first HO layout when he was just 13. He now spent his time building the Eagle West Division of the Santa Fe, running freight from Chicago to Barstow, and passenger service between LA Union Passenger Terminal and Chicago Dearborn Union stations. As you will see when you come to tour the layout next summer, it's the home of the world's only model wonkavator. Please welcome Scott Kremer and Byrne Blumenstein. So, Byrne, what can you tell us about Novi 2025?
Okay, thanks, Speed. Yeah, there's a lot to cover here. It's a pretty exciting convention that we put together. We expect a lot of folks to have a lot of questions about what we're doing because it's pretty different. So part of what we'll be talking about today is not just the convention, but for everybody to be prepared for a convention that's like no other convention you've ever been to before. So with that, let me get into some of the information on the convention itself, the general information, that just as background. The convention itself is going to start a little differently than most of the past conventions. It's actually going to start on 1 p.m. on Monday, on July 14th, 2025. So people will have time to actually get there and not immediately have to go into various sessions or tours. So it's set up a little bit differently from a schedule standpoint. It's a little shorter, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Like any convention, it's going to have plenty of clinics, layouts, visits, plenty of other events that'll run all the way through till Saturday at 4 p.m. But it's a little bit more than that. It's not the traditional time and day of most of the conventions. We've kind of adjusted it based on what we've seen some of the challenges with some of the earlier conventions. So we've gone a step farther. So let's get into, first of all, I mentioned that it's somewhat different than most conventions, and that's a key piece of what we want to relay to people today. It is a convention like no other. To be sure, not everything is different. For example, we're still going to have layout visits. In fact, we're planning on having about 58 of them, well, more than 58 that are already committed to the convention. So there'll be plenty of layout tours, plenty of time if that's what your focus is. And of course, we'll have plenty of clinics. And right now, our schedule calls for about 90 clinics. And more interestingly, all of them will be given at least twice. So if the one you want to see is conflicting with another one you want to see, you should have at least 2 chances to see any given clinic. So that's kind of similar to previous conventions to take it a step farther. We're also going to have operating sessions as you're used to. And currently we have over 300 operating session spots available. So anyone who wants to do op sessions, like any convention, we're going to make sure you've got plenty to go to. And of course, we're going to have tours, excursions. There'll be at least one major excursion every single day from Monday all the way through till Friday. So any day that you want to go, there's to be something going on if you don't want to do things that are just at the hotel. And of course, at the tail end, like most conventions, the convention will be followed by the National Train Show. But in the convention we've got coming up, it's strictly going to be Saturday and Sunday. There won't be a Friday day. But in general, that sounds pretty much like most of the previous conventions. So the question is, what's different that we'd like to communicate out to everybody? Well, let's start with the fact that most importantly, it's going to be less expensive. We well know that a lot of people have been concerned about the sheer rising cost of past conventions, everything from the hotel to registration to parking, and we've tackled almost all of those. First of all, when we talk about it being less expensive, it's also going to be a case where we are going to open the convention up to everyone, and everyone will pay the same price. So it's not if you're a member, you pay this, and if you're a non-member, you pay that. First of all, we would like all of the folks who are attending to bring people with them that may not have been to a convention because they may not be an NMRA member, so we can actually kind of bring in new members and see if they'd like what they see. But all the attendees can still participate in all the events for the same price, except that you've got to be an NMRA member to enter the national contest. But whether you're a member or not, the idea is to bring people in. The key piece here, first of all, starting with the registration price itself for the main event, and that's only going to be $125, and that's considerably less than previous conventions. So right off the bat, you're going to be spending less money to go to the convention, and that should bring, of course, more people in. And that includes all of the hotel-based events, other than obviously modeling with the masters and the make and take clinics where you've got supplies that have to be bought. But all the rest of it is included in the package. That includes all the layout visits. You don't pay to go to those. All the op sessions, nothing for that. None of the extra charges that sort of create a real increase in the cost. The ticket also includes the ticket to the National Training Show. If you're bringing a partner with you, that's going to be roughly half. It's $62 to bring a partner. So the objective here is to attract not only folks who would have liked to have gone, but it's become too expensive for them, or people who have not normally gone because they're not members. So we're really expanding who would be able to get the benefit of going to the convention by addressing some of the costs on that part of it. Along those lines, we're changing some other things, not just the dollars and cents, and I'll come back to those in a little bit later. The convention this time around is going to be shorter. It's going to start at 1 p.m. on Monday rather than starting on Saturday or Sunday, and it run all the way through till 4 p.m. the following Saturday. And I've been to conventions where by the time we get to the end of the week, everybody's pretty well whipped. Doing an 7 or 8 day convention is really a challenge for a lot of folks. So what we've done is shortened it a bit, so you're really not spending that much time there. Of course, like any of the conventions, we're going to wrap it up with a banquet Saturday night, but you still get all of the content you expect, but it means you're just simply going to be saving on 1 or 2 hotel nights, which helps you bring the cost down. And of course, you're spending less food and everything else that goes along with it. So we're really making it a little bit easier to attend as well as less expensive to attend. The other big change that we're doing differently is we are doing all the layout visits self-directed. And that's a huge change because most conventions, there are bus tours. There's lots of challenges to bus tours, aside from the fact that it runs up the cost. And when we talk about why most people will be there with cars, you'll understand part of why. But in our particular case, we will not be doing tour buses. Everybody will be able to carpool with other people they meet. A couple of the reasons that we do that. First of all, to do a minimal bus tour runs up the cost, but there's other disadvantages we found to bus tours. So if you go to tour A and you see something you like, but you're on a bus tour, you've only got 15 or 20 minutes, and then you've got to rush to the next tour. And that means if it's a smaller location that can't handle everybody on the bus, a bunch of people are sitting around doing nothing for half an hour because only some people can go see it. The other part is when you get to your next stop, if you realize there's something that you saw on the second tour, but you wanted to see if they did whatever that was on the first location you went to, you can't go back with the bus. If you're on the self-directed tours, you can spend as much time and as many places as you want, and you go back and forth between them. It's just a whole lot more flexible. It's not as impractical as a bus tour is, aside from you saving all the cost on buses. In our particular case, too, a significant portion of those locations are going to be so close within a 15 to 30-minute run, you really don't need a tour to get out there. We're doing relatively few that you're going to spend an hour to go get out to. So it's quick, plus you can get to plenty more places, more than you would necessarily with a bus tour. We were waiting for everybody else to go in. The layout tours are all going to be grouped geographically, and you will see on the website, we'll show you where they are grouped so that you can say, well, today, all of these in a certain area, I'm going to do just the ones in the Northeast, or I'm going to do the ones in the Southeast, or the ones that are close by the hotel location. So there will be layout visit groups every single day, and a given tour for a location may only be available one day, but there will be layout tours that you can go to every day. So if that's what you want to do when you go to the convention, we'll keep you occupied every single day with plenty of tours to keep you occupied. And those will start Monday afternoon when you can get there, and they'll run all the way through to and including Saturday. The layouts are going to be available from various different times. Typically, they're going to start around 1 o'clock. Some of them may start at a different time. Tuesday, since everybody should be there by that point, we can start doing the tours from 9 o'clock. But since everybody's getting there late the first day, it'll just be in the afternoons. And those will run all the way through to Saturday. Saturday itself will end a little bit earlier because we've got the banquets and some other things going on. So they'll stop at 4 o'clock. But every one of them will be open on a specific day. So that's significantly different than most previous conventions where you had to buy a ticket to go see the layouts. Now, let's talk about just two or three other things quickly that are also different. The operating sessions, like the visits to the layouts, are going to follow a pretty similar schedule. And the clinics themselves are going to starting at 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon. So if you're driving in and you get there Monday morning, you'll still be able to catch things that afternoon. You don't have to get there the night before. Tuesday through Saturday, we'll be starting at 9 a.m. because we figure most people will be there by then. And they'll run till 9 p.m. because folks want to be able to go after the clinics and after what other activities. So they'll be running till quite late in the day. There's another item that's significantly different for the convention, and that's the yard sale. The yard sale is not a silent auction. This is not a case where people will bring things in that they want to sell, and then they put in a bid for it, and they've got to compete with people, and they've got to be there at a certain time. Way more complex than it needs to be, and way more challenging. And for those of you who've been to some of the recent conventions, you well know that if you are at a silent auction type situation, everybody's lined up waiting to find out at one time whether or not they actually win something. With a yard sale, you see it, you pick it up, you bring it to the desk, you buy it, you own it, you're done. Going to make it nice and simple. You don't have to worry about bidding. You don't have to come back at a certain time. It'll be there for you. It's a whole lot more flexible. That's the first time we're doing quite something like this on such a large scale. So that's something else that's going to be different. And it should be a lot of fun to be able to go in and say, no pressure. If I see something I like, I can buy it right away. I don't have to worry about competing with anybody. So those are parts of what's different. Now, there are a couple of other things that we've adjusted. First of all, there will not be a celebration room for this convention. There will be plenty of space for model displays. We're just not doing a celebration room itself. The space for the displays are going to be part of the main social area. So that same area where you're meeting and greeting, getting together with friends, that social area, there'll be plenty of models, plenty of things to see right there in the main area that's kind of the heart of the conference. Keep in mind, too, that we'll be having the convention with the RPM organization, their conference. So there'll be a couple of layouts from RPM as well as our regular roadshow, the TT&TO clinic roadshow, where you'll be able to learn how to operate a layout with TT&TO right there in the lobby. And you can watch other people doing it and learn from what they're doing right there in the main facility. We're also going to do something else that's never been done before. There are a lot of manufacturers that people would like to see or talk to, but they're too small. They cannot afford what it costs to go to the main train show. What we're going to do is have a small area set up where these little small, sometimes mom and pop operations will be given space to demonstrate these cutting edge products that are really not ready for big time at the model train show, but you'll be able to talk to them right there in the main area, and we'll rotate through a couple of different ones over the time of it, and you'll be able to buy products in many cases from them right there in that main area. So it's not just the big guys over at the train show, it's the really small guys who are on the cutting edge of what you probably would never see at the train show and never get a chance to see anywhere else. So that gives you kind of a sense of what's different. Now let's talk about the show itself. The convention is pretty centrally located. One of the key things that people have talked to us about the last convention is they've got to fly someplace, they've got to spend for airfare, and that discourages a lot of folks. If you're flying from New York to California, it costs a bunch. Well, if you look at a map, the Metro Detroit area is within 65% of the U.S.'s population drive time for a single day. So we figured with 2/3 of all the people who would want to go to the convention, all of them are within a day's drive. There's no reason to be buying a plane ticket if you really don't need to. So you don't have to spend for airfare. So that takes a pretty significant chunk of it. And that means people as far south as Kentucky, as Tennessee, Washington, New York, up into Canada, out into Minneapolis, those folks can get here within a day. You don't need to fly. And in many cases, it will take you less time to drive. even if you allow for all the time it takes you to go to and from the airport and baggage and everything that goes with it. So that's a pretty significant advantage for us that we're that close to that many people. You're going to be able to bring your car with you. And of course, if you have the car with you, that lets you do all the things you'd like to do on your own schedule. Let's talk a little about the location itself. For those of you not familiar with it, the convention itself is going to be in Novi, Michigan, which is a suburb in the northwest corner of the metropolitan Detroit area. And yes, it is pronounced Novi. And just a quick comment for the folks who are wondering where that comes from. The very name of the town that we're having the convention in actually has a railroad story behind it. You may know that the Paramount Railroad and the stagecoaches before them, in many cases, didn't name the towns that they went to and had stations at. Instead of naming them, they gave them numbers. Well, in the case of the Paramount, this particular station in the area where we're going to have the convention was station number 6, which was displayed as the Roman numeral NO.VI. Years later, when the town incorporated and the town was looking for a name, unlike most cities where the train station is named after the town decided to name the town after the train station. And the way they viewed it, it was NOVI, which they pronounce Novi rather than station number 6. So that instead of the train station having the name of a city nearby, the city has the name of the station. And that's where the convention is going to be. So it's Novi, although we pronounce it for the name of the show, the convention itself, we do refer to it as station number 6. It will be obviously being the Motor City, obviously it's well able to support people coming in with cars. And if you look at that little picture that I put there down on the lower left, not only is it a town known for being the Motor City, but it's also the birthplace of the traffic light. That picture you see there is actually the first traffic jam around the first traffic light that was on Woodward Avenue in the Detroit area. Let's talk about the hotel. Another reason why we found a lot of the expense for previous conventions was that they were very large resort hotels, which have wonderful amenities, but you pay for it. It costs a fortune. And I can tell you some of the conventions I've been at, my room has been so far away, I thought I was in the next state. Just too big a hotel for the purposes. And I had a long walk every time I went back to my room or went to a restaurant. Well, what we've done here was we've decided to take a suburban hotel, major brand name, it's a Sheraton. But what we're doing here is instead of using one huge hotel to support all the rooms we need, we're doing a group of 4 hotels that are all right nearby. The Sheraton itself, we have a block of 143 rooms that are accessible. So you're going to be right there in a hotel, right where the convention is. Don't have to go anyplace if you don't want to leave the hotel property. If you want to go to the others, they're nearby, and most of them have shuttles, so you don't have to drive to them if you don't want them. One caveat, and I'll come back to this a little bit later, being that the hotels are not these gigantic resort hotels, it doesn't take very long with a convention of our size to eat up all of the rooms. So a strong suggestion, and I'll come back to this later, is if you're thinking of going, your first step is going to be register with us on the website. And the second step, I would strongly suggest get your hotel room registered because they will run out of rooms at the Sheraton and you'll have to land up going to one of the hotels that are nearby rather than being in the same building. So keep that in mind. Unlike other conventions where you could wait until 2-3 weeks before and go reserve a room, if you do that here, you will not get a room in that hotel. They'll all be sold out. Matter of fact, my understanding is they're already out of one type of room combination already because so many people are booking into the hotel. So make yourself a note that you need to get that hotel room booked right away. Now let's talk about the next piece of this. Being that it's a suburban hotel, it's free parking. Let me repeat, it's free parking. And for the folks who complained about the sheer cost of parking at the last couple of conventions that we've been to on the national level when they've been at resorts, you're not going to be paying $20 a day every single day to go park your car, and even more if you have a hotel where you're paying for coming in and going out of the parking lot. Plenty of free parking. That's the third area that you'll end up saving money on. Now, let's talk about food choices. Another advantage of placing the convention where we did is that unlike some of the large resort hotels, they've only got 1 or 2 or 3 restaurants there, and they're in a location where you've got to go a long way to find anything if you want to leave the hotel property. We've got about 50 hotels within a very short distance of the Sheraton. So there'll be plenty of places to go to, anything from top end restaurants like Fleming's or Mitchell's all the way to McDonald's or Wendy's. They're all within a few minutes of the hotel. If you want to eat at the hotel, there'll be obviously service there as well. But the point here is your food cost is another area that you'll end up spending a whole lot more because you got plenty of choices that cost a whole lot more than some of the resort hotels. We haven't worked out the pricing yet on what the hotel restaurant menu is going to be in the prices, but you'll have so many choices, should not be an issue for you. So that's another advantage to us. Now, let's talk about the convention itself. We're expecting to have a minimum of 90 different clinics. And every one of them, like I said before, we're going to give them twice. So if you've got a conflict, you should have at least one more chance to see it. We're not expecting to post the full list of clinics until we get a little closer to the convention. So we're targeting around January 1, we're going to post to the website the list of as many clinics that have already been locked down. So you'll be able to look at your schedules and see which ones do I want to plan for and which ones are not or are of interest to you. We're also making an effort to uniquely try to make sure these are fresh and interesting and educational clinics. I can tell you what we're not looking for. We're not looking to do clinics that you've seen 20 people do at 5 different conventions, or that they've done, but they've done it over and over again on YouTube. If you can see it everywhere else, there's no point in coming to look to our convention to give you the same thing you can get everywhere else. So we're looking for fresh content or different approaches to content that's been delivered before. The clinics, like I said, are going to start on Monday, so around 1 p.m., and they will go all the way till 9. Actually, it should be till the end of the day schedule, and they'll start again 9 a.m. Tuesday, running through Saturday. So you'll have a pretty wide time slot to work with. But a key piece here is if you're driving in Monday morning, you'll get there early enough that you can catch at least a half a day's worth of clinics running for the afternoon and into the evening. You don't have to come in the day before because there's a bunch of clinics you want starting Monday morning. We're not doing that. They will last until 10 o'clock Monday through Friday until 4 o'clock Saturday. So the folks who are going out on tours or excursions will have plenty of chances to see clinics in the evening if that's what you want to do. Another item I want to remind everybody is that we're going to rear load the top best clinics at the tail end of the convention. So if you leave early, you're going to miss some of the best because we expect most people are going to be there at the tail end and they're going to want the most interesting ones when they're there. So if you leave Thursday, you're going to miss the top stuff. So try to make sure you scheduled everything all the way through the week. Also, the daily selections are going to be available on something called your online itinerary, personal itinerary. We're going to be doing something, and I'll show it to you in a few minutes, that we have not seen done before. And that is when you see something you like, you'll be able to, if you will, capture that on a personal itinerary on your phone so that you'll be able to take things like the clinics and say, gee, I like these clinics. If I indicate that I like them, I'll be able to check them off my phone. I won't be running around weeks before trying to work out what am I supposed to be doing on Wednesday, what am I supposed to be doing on Thursday. We're going to kind of automate that whole process, and you'll see a little bit more about it shortly. Next, let's talk about the layout visits. One of the differences in Michigan versus some of the other locations that we've had conventions before is we don't have the handicap of where those layouts are. In Michigan, we have basements, lots of them. Almost all of our tours are going to be in full-size basements. The challenge in locations that model railroaders have, if they're in a location where there are no basements, in many cases they're simply limited to the maximum amount of space that might be in a bedroom or might be in a garage. And I've seen lots of garage layouts, and they're beautiful, but they're limited on space. In our case, almost nobody has a layout in a garage. They are all in basements or separate buildings that are with the basements. The layout tours themselves, as I said, there will be no charge for layout tours. So if you're driving out to those during the convention, you can see as many as you want. You go back to them over and over again. We're not going to rip you a bill making you pay to go see layout tours because that's a key piece of the convention. Right now, we are planning, well, currently we have 60 layouts targeted to be available for you. So you will have more than enough visits every single day to be able to spend part of that day going out and visiting other people's layouts. Most of these are home layouts, which means they're large. You might have a home layout that's as small as 200 square feet, but I can tell you the majority of the layouts are 1,000 to 3,000 square feet. They're way bigger than the typical layout size for a home layout at most previous conventions, simply because we're not dealing with high water levels and lack of basements. All the layouts are going to be vetted to make sure that you're going to enjoy and learn from them. All but a very few are home layouts. We do have a few that are club layouts that are spectacular, but the majority of the layouts are going to be home layouts, not club layouts, because they can make layouts that are large enough. The other item is we've all been to conventions where you get a description of the layout and you get there, you've seen a picture of it, but when you show up, gee, it doesn't quite look like that because half of it still looks like plywood and foam. We're looking at layouts strictly that are predominantly completed. So you're seeing something that's really a lot, not just a few scenes that have been completed. All the layouts, like I said, are going to be self-guided, no buses, none of that expense. Now, the program is going to contain a description of every single layout. You'll see them starting to appear on our website already. We're also going to provide QR codes so that if you want to take your phone out, take a picture of the QR code, that will give you the map to get to the layout. You don't need a paper printout of what's the route. Once you got a QR code picked up on your phone, which is nothing more than you take your camera out, point it at the QR code, and up pops a link, and then you just hit the link, and it gives you the Google map, and you're ready to go. You can drive out. You've got your description on how to get there. We will have a larger general map, but we're also going to have on the website all the locations so you get a general sense of where they are as well as where they specifically are. We will not be giving you the addresses until about a week before, obviously, but you'll get the area where they are. So you can kind of plan your logistics. Matter of fact, you could go in today in many cases and see a lot of the layouts and figure out the logistics as to which ones you want to go see. The layout visits are deliberately being done geographically to minimize the drivings. We're obviously going to do them Monday through Saturday. All the daily selections will be available for your online personal itinerary also. So when you go to your personal itinerary on your phone, you'll be able to see, gee, these are the layout tours that I want to go see today. Look at your phone, click on it. You'll be able to take it, take you to the directions right away to get there. So you literally build your own personal itinerary, and you'll probably be able to do that before you even get there without having to go through reams of paper and Google Maps trying to figure out where these places are. The other item for layout visits, a big item, is that we are posting videos for virtually all the layouts, not just photos. So if you go and look at the website, you'll start to see a video that gives you a much, much better sense than just seeing 5 or 6 photographs of a layout. We've all been to layouts, like I said, that look good, but sometimes the rest of it is maybe disappointing or is not as challenging as the areas that you saw in the pictures. With a video, you get a much, much, much better sense of what's being done, and you sort of have a mini tour of what it's like to go to that particular layout itself. By the way, for the folks who may have some mobility issues and, for example, can't go downstairs to basements, the fact that we're going to have videos mean those people will have an opportunity, one way or the other, whether it's on the website or whatever, to actually do a video tour of those layouts that they couldn't go to otherwise. So even if you can't do basements, you're going to get to see layouts, plenty of them, and you'll be able to see videos, not just snapshots. Let's talk about the operating sessions. We're currently working on the op sessions. We're going to give you the ability to operate on everything from car for car to switch list to car cards, prototypical waybills, and of course TT&TO and CTC. We're going to have them all. So any one of those that you're interested in, you'll have a pretty broad view of which ones to go to. We're expecting about 20 or more layouts providing operating sessions, so you'll have plenty of choices. And we'll hopefully we'll have those every single day. So you don't want to leave early because in many cases you can have the opportunity in the afternoon to go to an op session or an evening. You'll be signing up through the op sessions through our website after January 1. We're holding until that date. So you just go back to NMRA 2025. You'll see a link there for the op sessions. It will take you out to a unique website just for that purpose. And then you'll be able to say, okay, here's the op session I want to go to. Is it full or not? You'll know whether or not all the positions or any positions are still available there. And again, once you select it, you'll be able to put it on your online itinerary. So you'll know, hey, Wednesday, that afternoon, I've got a op session that I want to go to. So there's your reminder right on your phone that it's there on your schedule. Contests. Very quickly to go through what's happening there. The traditional National Model Rating Contest will be available to all the NMRA members. That will be in a separate room, and that's being managed by the National Contest staff. And of course, there'll be an award ceremony for the contest. That'll be Thursday afternoon. The only limitation there is you got to be a NMRA member to enter in that contest, but it'll be available for everybody to look at and see what the results are. And those are usually pretty amazingly interesting. We're also going to have displays of People's Choice Contest type of displays, where you can look in and see, well, if you're interested in freight cars or structures, whatever. The models will be invited to, identify the models as participating in the People's Choice and display it there. Any MRA member can or not, but they can enter the People's Choice, but you can only enter typically one contest or the other. Either you're going to enter it at a national or you're going to try the People's Choice. Each category will be sponsored for the appropriate manufacturers. So they're going to hopefully provide a $100 gift certificate for first place and $50 for second place. So please, try to enter those. There's always a good chance you can win something. And Friday afternoon, you'll see what the awards are. Excuse me. Okay, the display and modular area. This is going to be the hub of the convention. So you'll have a large central area where you can see layouts. You can see people doing learning about op sessions. You have the displays from these various vendors. There'll be social areas, plenty of room to sit down and talk with your friends, meet people, find out who's going to what layouts, so you can decide if you want to ride with them. So that will be sort of an interesting hub, rather than just a corridor in a hall. Of course, we're doing the SIG group, special interest groups. So we will be providing facilities for the SIG groups. Some of their schedules can be changed from the traditional time. So if you've been going to the SIG events, keep in mind, typically they start during the weekend at the head end of the convention. And since we're not starting until Monday, it's not going to start Sunday. So it'll be a little bit of a different schedule. You want to see those on the website. But if you register for the SIG events, it does include shirts, but you have the choice of, do you want to pay for the dinner as well or not? The SIG events, once you schedule those, once you register for those, they're also going to be on your personal itinerary. So again, you'll be able to look at your phone and see, gee, what do I have today? It might be that dinner is that particular day. The rail yard sale that I talked about before, real quickly, it is really a yard sale. You can bring any piece of railroad item that you're thinking of selling. Tuesday morning, you can drop it off. The necessary forms will be there. They'll be on the website. You can just bring it in. Not a silent auction, but the items will begin Wednesday and possibly Thursday being open. Everybody should have brought them in by then. You'll be able to go in anytime Wednesday afternoon that's on your schedule. You establish what the sale price is. The convention takes 10% of the price to cover the billing and so on, facilities, and the rest is basically you leave with a payment. So if you got something good that you want to get rid of, this is the time to do it. Roadshow, that's long been a tradition for the conventions where we've set up a full large modular layout that you can actually learn time and train order operating sessions. And I've seen in the past where folks have had a really great time. We're going to set that up out in the lobby so everybody can see it and watch it rather than being in the main area in Ballroom B, right next to the displays in the other areas, so that everybody can come in and go out and see what's it like to actually do an op session on a layout. And that's going to run all the way through till Friday night. So you'll have plenty of time to either just have fun learning or just watch. Okay, vendors. I mentioned this before. There's not a large area for vendors. We're not doing a train show at the convention, but we are going to have a space for about 8 vendors Tuesday and Wednesday and another 8 more Thursday and Friday. The little guys who are just starting out with maybe the latest cutting technology, maybe they're real small, but they'll have a setup there that will be available for you to take a look at. Even if you don't want to go to the train show, you'll actually have things that you can see and buy at the convention itself. These are small guys. They might be doing resin kits or 3D printed items or whatever. Some things that will be totally unexpected. And again, that's something unique. Modeling with the masters, if you've been to conventions before, you know that those are sessions to get to work and build something, learn how to do some process with the absolute masters of our sessions. So there will be modeling with the masters almost every single day. You'll see those. And of course, once you register for those and pay for them, they'll also be available in your online agenda. For the folks who are not going to the rail activities, of course, we'll have non-rail events set up as well at the hotel. So if your spouse is coming and wants something to do, we'll give them plenty. Let's talk about some of the real crown jewels of the trip, the tours and excursions. First of all, the lead one will be Greenfield Village and Henry Ford Museum. If you've never been there or never heard of it, it's one of the most spectacular and largest history museums in the United States. It is so large. If you look at the picture on the left, that's an entire Allegheny steam engine sitting indoors on the floor of the Henry Ford Museum, and that's not the only steam engine there. On the outside, for Greenfield Village, You can take a ride behind a steam engine and get up close with one there and get the smells and sights and scents. So, of course, we're going to have steam engines both indoors and outdoors for you to see. That's just a part of Greenfield Village. For those of you not aware of it, it's got plenty of other things, everything from the limousine that Kennedy rode in Dallas to what a hotel room looked like in Holiday Inn in the 1950s that we might remember. That's a major, major tourist attraction in the Detroit area. So you certainly want to look at details to register for that particular tour. The next item is the Ford plant, and I would be willing to bet that probably half of the folks who are on this call are driving a pickup truck because that's the most common vehicle being built in the United States and sold in the United States. Well, it's great if you got one, but how'd you like the chance to actually see what it's like to see your type of vehicle being built? Well, you can now. Ford has set up a plant tour. That's a pretty heavy duty thing to go see. Everybody comes away from it is absolutely amazed and learns a whole lot about, gee, now I know more about my truck than I thought I knew. You'll definitely want that. So that tour we expect to be sold out long before the convention date. That's probably the #2 most popular tourist attraction in the Detroit area. The next thing we're doing, well, we're not doing the typical bus tours. We're going to do a tour out on the water instead of in a bus, which will take you past the Rouge Plant industrial area, but it'll also take you under the newest major bridge being built in the United States between the Detroit area and Windsor, Ontario, the Gordie Howe Bridge. It is the longest cable stay bridge in North America. There are people who are actually going to be coming into the Metro Detroit area just to see this enormous bridge and see what it's like. It's the largest bridge of its type in some areas, but particularly in terms of poured concrete roadway in the world. So it's an amazing bridge, and it's an international bridge, and you'll be sailing right under it on that tour as well on the way. So a lot of folks are going to say, hey, it's summertime, I want to do something really outdoors. That's a great way to do it. It may be the spouses want to do that. Next item. One of the amazing things that's gone on in the last few months in the Detroit area, we've added to our itinerary, we're going to do a drive-by tour of Michigan Central Station. If you're not familiar with it, when this thing was built, it was the tallest train station in the world. You're talking about a 17-story monster designed by the same people who did Grand Central Station in New York, which is why the front of it looks like Grand Central Station on a small scale. The problem with that particular building was it was abandoned for a long time. It was just a rundown building. You can see in the lower left the pictures of the graffiti. It's been completely restored. Our guest speaker on the at the banquet will be one of the folks on the architectural team that actually restored that building. Ford Motor Company bought it, and to launch that building so that the rest of the country knew about it, they actually did an NBC broadcast with a full-blown concert to introduce a couple little bands here and there. The lead singer that started off the launch concert for Michigan Central was Diana Ross. She was followed by Jelly Roll, Eminem, Jack White. It was a spectacular, spectacular broadcast show shown all over the country to introduce that station. So there are a lot of people coming in to actually see Michigan Central Station. There's a possibility we may end up getting a better look at the inside of it, but we're certainly you're going to get to see a whole lot more of it during the banquet. On that same tour, and I mentioned Diana Ross, most of us grew up to the sound of Motown music, playing those songs, singing those songs. Well, how'd you like to be able to stand in the room where all that music that you sang and learned to and danced to when you were younger, that's the Motown Museum. That museum will be part of the same tour as the Michigan Central tour. So you'll actually be able to get to see the history of railroading in the Detroit area with Michigan Central and the history of music in the Detroit area with Hitsville USA's museum. They'll all be on the same tour. There will be a bus tour, but it will be a spectacular tour. Obviously, because it's Motown and Motown music, that one we expect to have sold out long before the convention comes around. So again, another reason you need to get yourself registered pretty quickly. Whoops, wrong way. Let me go back the other way here. Now, let's talk about the follow-ups. The grand finale of the convention that we're working on is the ride behind 1225. If you're not familiar with it, that is the engine that was used to create the movie Polar Express. And yeah, there are plenty of Polar Express type tours all over the country. This is the original. The sound crews that did that movie actually did that movie at the Steam Institute using the actual 1225. So we will have a tour running 1225, and we may be joined by another historical group. So we expect several hundred people to want to go on that particular ride, and it's an amazing engine to see and to see it up close. And that's what the Steam Railroading Institute will be doing on our convention excursions. So that's expected to be the Friday convention that will really wrap things up. And again, we expect that one to sell it pretty quickly too. Next, National Train Show, of course, we'll be working with the folks on the National Train Show side. That's going to be at the Suburban Showcase. It's big exhibition hall, way bigger than is typical. That's only a few minutes away from the hotel. Parking is usually pretty expensive. It's $8 to $10, but we're going to include the opportunity for you to buy a shuttle ticket to get over there. The advantage of the shuttle ticket, of course, is you can go back and forth as many times as you want. So if you want to go there Saturday and then you forgot to buy something, you want to go back Sunday, you may have that option. But the point is, at least one day we're going to have a shuttle bus going across. Right now, if I'm correct, Scott, we're not going to do Sunday. But you'll be able to go back and forth 2 or 3 times Saturday if you want to, which is really the intent. Most people obviously do this the same day. That will be there right from the hotel. Schedule will be available, and you'll be able to see what day it is. Of course, that will also be on your personal itinerary. So to wrap up the convention itself, we will have a Friday night party at the hotel for the People's Choice Awards. That'll run from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. And you'll actually be able to make a choice if you want to have pizza and pop, or pizza and wine, or pizza and beer. You'll have 3 different choices for what you'd like to have at that event for that party. Some will cost a little bit more than others, so you can get and pay for just what you want. The next piece is the main Saturday night banquet. That will be at the hotel. The architect that led the registration teams for Michigan Central will do a full presentation on how it went from the picture you see in the middle, covered with graffiti, to this beautifully restored facility. That is where the concert was. And matter of fact, you'll see in the upper right corner, there's Diana Ross when she was doing the broadcast concert from right in front of Michigan Central Station. So you'll actually be where she is when you drive by there, and you'll hear all about that, and of course the concert when you are at the Saturday night, the grand banquet. Now, pricing, let me kind of wrap up with that. The most important aspect of the convention is really to make sure it's available to as many people as possible, less costly as possible. The hotel rooms are only going to be about $140 to $180 a night, way less than what you've paid at previous conventions. Plus, all the parking is free. That's another way you save. Everyone's welcome. So if you've got non-NMRA members, they get to pay the same price as you. They don't pay more. Standard registration for members and non-members will be that $125, and that includes the National Train Show entrance. Spouse tickets will be $62, and if you bring in a child from 11 to 17, that's only $20. If they're younger than that, they're free. We will have one-day only tickets, so if you're only able to go to the convention for a single day, that will be a $40 ticket, and you can get, if you just want to be there, let's say for Friday and Saturday to do the show and some of the other events, you'll obviously be able to get a 2-day ticket, and that's $60. All the layout visits, all the op sessions, everything else is self-guided. They're all basically free. The shuttle transportation is only $10. So again, that's pretty inexpensive. So that kind of wraps up the key pieces. The last item I wanted to cover with you in the next 2 or 3 minutes is the way registration is going to be done. It'll be entirely done via NMRA2025.com. You'll be able to register for the events. It's a very, very, very simple website. We've gotten a lot of positive comments to make it real easy to use. It's just a few lines. We're not filling it up with all sorts of purchases and details and complexities and bus tickets, keeping it absolutely to the minimum. You select what you want from just a quick list, but that registration allows you to indicate both fee items and non-fee items. So you can say, I want to go to this particular layout tour area. You can put it on your agenda, capture it there, and you'll see what's available. And the system won't let you accidentally register for 2 different items that conflict with each other. It's all going to be automated. Plus, you'll be able to go in there and get the Google Maps to see where you want to go and what sequence you want to go in them. Anything that you select will automatically create a personal agenda that you can go back to on your phone. To give you a quick look at it, after you've registered, when you go over to your phone and go back into the website, you'll see this little menu there that will let you pick your itinerary. And that itinerary will basically be built from all the different items for each different day that you have checked something off. So if you see in the upper right, you'll be able to look at Monday's schedule, for example, for you, all the things that you've either paid for or that are available to you that you've indicated that you like. And you'll be able to build that personal itinerary, Plus, you'll be able to build your schedule on a geographic level. So you'll be able to go into this website and say, hey, these are all the different locations that there are tours, layout tours. Here's where the hotels are. There's where the campgrounds are. But if you're only interested in going to the ones, let's say in the Northeast, you would just uncheck the box in the left for all the areas you're not interested in. And there you got a personal map that shows you just the locations that you want to go to. And then you'll land up with a map like this that just is your personal map showing just what you want. And the itinerary that I mentioned, when you open your phone and go to that schedule for the day, you can click on, let's say, Wednesday, and right there on your phone is the list of everything that's either available to you or that you paid for. So it'll give you a reminder, hey, I've got the LD SIG layout tour available to me from 9 to 6. I want to see the road show. That's at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I got the weathering clinic first thing. On the other hand, at the bottom, the Detroit Model Railroad Club layout tour is available from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So, gee, now I know I've got time to do that after I get the others done. And you can just pick the individual day that you want. And the upper right, you can also see where it says all tracks. Well, you can say, I don't want to look at everything. I want my personal itinerary to just show me the clinics for the day. So now I don't have to shuffle through paper. I can see all the clinics that day that I'm interested in, or just the layout tours, or when the modeling the masters are, if I've got that schedule for the day, or when the operating sessions are for that day. So you literally build your own little itinerary real simply by just picking them or paying for them, and it's right there on your phone. So it makes it nice and easy to use that tool, which gives you another reason to do this. So that's basically what we have built for you. When you go to the website now, you'll be able to register today, be able to have links there for the hotels. You'll have the videos to the layouts. There's lots of videos to go see on the layouts. Start looking through them right away so you can decide which ones you want. And that is pretty well where we are at this point. That is station number 6. That's what we've got in Nova. I'd be prepared for a convention that's like none you've ever seen before. So with that, why don't we just open it up for questions and see if there's anything.
Can I have a couple minutes, Byrne?
Yeah, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah.
If you would take questions.
I just have a couple things I wanted to say. Some people might want to know why and why we're doing what we're doing in broader terms. Okay, one of the things I want to make clear to everybody is that we have tried very hard to honor the past, all the traditions, the things that people have gone to conventions for years. We've tried to honor that. But we've also tried to look to the future and say, is there something we need to change in order to attract young people and people that have different interests, like railroad prototype modelers, like narrow gauge people, O gauge people, N gauge people? Because the truth of the matter is, we're in competition with a whole bunch of other conventions throughout the year. So a lot of what we've done is to try to do that. We've tried to make this convention far more flexible. You'll have more choices about what you want to do and how you do it, where you go, etc. But most importantly, we've really tried very, very hard to drive down the cost as much as we can. We think that we're going to be, for an average person, you can come to this convention and do everything you want to for perhaps as little as 30% of what you would have paid for almost any previous convention. We'd like to think that that will cause a lot of new people to come to the convention, not only to enjoy the convention, but also to explore the NMRA and perhaps join us and increase our membership. So that's the background between what we're doing. We hope it makes a change. That's all I wanted to add. If we can get questions, and we'll see what we can do with those.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to questions. Speed, if you want to take it from there and open it up for Q&A.
What is the best international airport for people coming in from Europe and Australia?
That is Detroit Metro Airport, DTW. It is a major, major international airport. It's one of Northwest Airlines' major hubs. It's probably the 4th or 5th largest airport in the United States and the top-rated airport in the U.S.
You just aged yourself. It's actually Delta.
It's right. Delta is and Delta has so many flights going there from all over the world, but
yeah.
All to Canada. So you'll have plenty of choices. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's the Detroit Metro, and it's only 18-minute drive.
Does Novi have an Amtrak station?
Novi doesn't, but the nearest Amtrak station is the Dearborn station. And that Dearborn station is probably about the same distance from the airport. Or to put it differently, you can probably get your bags. You can probably get to the hotel from Dearborn or from Metro Airport and less time that it'll take to get your bags. Yep.
So from the airport, how do I get to the hotel?
Several ways. Most commonly, people are simply using Uber. There are some hotel shuttles, but it'll actually cost you less to use Uber or any of the ride shares. That's the most common method they use nowadays. Very easy to do.
However, we do want to emphasize that if at all possible, everyone should try to get a car and drive.
Yep. And you can rent cars at the airport, of course, if you want.
Are there still slots available for clinics, and how could I sign up for one to give a clinic?
Yes, there's still plenty of slots available for clinics. We've got quite a few in the hopper, but more that we're working on. If you go to the website and if you look at the screen I've got in front of you, up the top it says "Contact Us." Just hit the contact button and fill in your name and information, and we will definitely have Andy Kinney, who's our clinic manager, reach out to you and talk to you about bringing you on board. Sure, we'd love to have you.
And then someone, or actually more than one, asked about small layouts. Are there any layouts going to be set up in the convention space, or do you have an idea of how many small layouts are on the list of layouts to go see?
Okay.
There will be only the 3 layouts at the hotel we talked about. There are 2 layouts coming from the Railroad Prototype Modelers Conference, one in N and one in HO scale. They're simply outstanding. There will also be the 3rd one, which is the modular N scale layout to support the roadshow, timetable, train order, operation, and so on. Those are the only layouts that will be in the hotel. This is not a great big resort hotel. We don't have a lot of space. It's going to be interesting, but no, there will be no other layouts on display at the hotel. As to small layouts in general, we don't have a lot of those. We have, as Byrne said, we have pretty good sized basements, and most of our layouts are decent sized. So if you want to go see a 100 square foot layout, personally, I don't even know of any.
Yeah. My layout is probably one of the smallest, and it's 500 square feet, and I would bet it's the smallest of any that I've seen from our Division 6.
Okay. Any streaming to the virtual world from this convention?
We haven't gotten that far.
Nope. At this point, no.
There's a real possibility, but we haven't gotten that far.
Then there's a question for Brad, who can unmute himself with 3 clicks, I believe. Will the NMRAx team have a meet and greet session? Click, 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 click. That was 3 clicks.
Of course we will.
And then last question for the convention team. Can you give us that website one more time?
Yep. It is real simple. You see it actually in the top of the screen. If you go to NMRA2025.com, that's all you need to know to get to the website. And real simple.
Well, gentle people, thank you very, very much. We're all very excited to admit that we already signed up, so you might have to deal with us being there, both me and Brad. And thank you for telling the rest of the world about it as well.
Okay. Speed, I'll leave you with this. We've already have over 200 registrations in the first 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's coming in faster now. Let me go back to one final piece to wrap with. When I said you need to register right away, we've had conversations that this is a convention we have the potential to have to cut off registration because we might run out of room. There's so many people trying to get into the convention. You need to register now, first come, first serve.
But can't we fill up station number 7 as well?
I wish.
Yeah, no can do. Nope, that would overload.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Welcome back. This is the October edition of NMRAx 2024. Speed escaped from the helix. Some are missing in action. But our next clinician has been serious about railway modeling since 1986. His modeling focuses on the 1990s in Atlantic, Canada, and his work has appeared in Railroad Model Craftsman, Canadian Railway Modeler, and Rail Model Journal. Can't they just say model railroading something? From Maitland, Nova Scotia, please welcome Will Lawrence.
Good evening. Thanks for the introduction, Speed. I'm here to talk this evening about water slide decals. As the introduction says, I've been doing this since 1986. My unofficial motto is cutting up perfectly good models since 1986. I do a lot of that. So I end up doing a lot of my own painting and a lot of my own decal work. I'm also a reformed airplane modeler, and that led to a lot of the decal techniques that I use today. So I hope to demystify it a little bit, and I'm going to take you through some of the steps in decaling this little fella. This is a Bowser C630M that I'm reconfiguring as a late production model that's been rebuilt by CN and is now currently was running on the Cape Breton and Central Nova Scotia Railway. This is a scheme that was available from Bowser in a factory painted model. However, once you've done the modifications needed to represent a later rebuilt unit, you really have to repaint the model. It's the easiest way to deal with it. So the rebuild is topic for another day. Today I'm just going to talk about the fundamentals of decal work, because a lot of people are afraid of wet process decals, especially as that subset of the model gets a little smaller. People are a little worried they're going to mess up their model, or they just don't know the processes. So I hope to demystify that just a little bit. Wet process decals at their core are a very thin film that on which is applied a layer of ink that carries the markings that you want. They are separated from the paper backing by dipping them in water, hence the term water slide, and they are held to the model strictly by capillary action. They seal themselves to them when the water is driven out from underneath the decal. It adheres to the painted finish. Then when you clear coat it, it looks like it's painted on if you do it correctly. The most important part of preparing for water slide decals is to ensure you have a semi-gloss or gloss finish. As you can see there, I've got a nice semi-gloss finish on this model. The surfaces are glossy or smooth, glossy or flat, because they are smooth or rough. A perfectly flat surface will be glossy and will reflect light brightly. A rough surface will be flat in finish, and those irregularities in the surface that create the flat image, the flat finish, also trap air underneath your wet decal. And that's what causes the most common problem known as silvering. That's where air gets trapped under the finished decal, and it changes the reflectance of the materials that the light is passing through, and the decal film shows up rather drastically. So you want to avoid that. And the simplest way to avoid that is by starting with a glossy coat. Afterwards, you put other coats over it. We'll talk about those in a little while. So I'm going to start by just dropping one of these decals into the water. You notice I've got what is actually an old ashtray from the Canadian National Railway, and it is sitting on a coffee cup warmer that I bought on Amazon, I think, for about $10, and that heats the water just a little bit to the temperature of a cup of coffee. That accelerates the chemical process by which the water soaks in under the paper, and it speeds up the application process. Back in the day, you buy a model airplane kit, and the decals would say, put in the water for 2 minutes. We've been in there about 30 seconds, and that's for a fairly thick decal. That's kind of a long soak time for what I work with. In a little while, I'll show you some. These are microscale decals. I will show some highball decals going on, which are a thinner film, and they need about 3 seconds in that hot water to be ready to use, and that drastically speeds up the decal process. Once I've finished soaking it, I dropped it on the model. I pulled the backing up from underneath, and now I'm just using a micro brush, which I'm dipping on a paper towel to take away the excess. I'm just working out any excess air that may have been trapped under the model. As I said, the shiny finish will help with this. If you have difficulty with it, there are preparation methods you can use. You can just drop some water on there, so you're getting water on water, and that excludes any air. You also can use a commercial product such as Microscale Microset. That or testers used to make a decal set. There are several others. Those are setting solutions, and a set solution is a wetting solution that's applied before you put the decal on. I only use it for very difficult decal applications. That's different from microsol or solvaset, which are decal solvents. I'll talk about more of those a little bit more in a little while. So right now I'm just starting by applying that, manipulated it to where I want it, and I'm just gradually working from the center out, pushing the air out from under the decal film. So when you apply decals, there are several different manufacturers, and they all basically produce the same product. I'm not going to talk about dry transfers today. They're kind of niche. They produce a sheet of decals like this. It's kind of difficult to see in this light, but these are what are called spot printed decals, which means the film is only applied around where the ink is. A lot of decals, especially smaller companies and cottage industry ones, they'll be a complete sheet of film on which the decals are printed. The difference is this: these decals are silk screen printed. The ink is applied to the paper, and the film is applied over it. So that makes it they makes them very robust. They will not damage easily, but it also makes them a little thicker. And it takes a little more time in the water. That's why I use the hot water. Thinner film decals that are printed on a modern inkjet printer or equivalent printer, they usually are printed over the top of the film. And the film is, like I said, the full sheet, and the ink just lays on top. There's no overcoat. Now, that is important for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, that means that the ink is the top layer. It is therefore those decals are more delicate, and they require careful handling. Try not to touch the ink with metal and such like, so you don't scratch the ink. The other thing is that they do apply more thinly, so you get it's much easier to get that painted on look. It also means that when you trim the decal out, you have to be very careful to trim as close as you can to the ink. I usually start with a sharp number 11 blade and my trusty steel ruler. The paper will dull an X-Acto blade relatively quickly, so keep some spares handy. Now, this is a long decal. And you see as I manipulate, I'm grabbing it by one end whenever possible and manipulating it by the paper and the film, not so much the ink. I'm working with a reference photograph just to show what I'm doing. I'm not going to share that screen. I'm working from a prototype photograph that shows me how these decals are, this lettering is laid out on the locomotive, and I'm referring to it very frequently. I try to do all my positioning with the paper still in place. That's important because I don't want to abrade the film more than I have to, because it will break if you're not careful. As you see, I've moved it slightly to the left to get the end of the decal onto the model. I pin that down with my Byrne brush, and I grab with my tweezers, and I gently pull the paper right out from underneath the film. And if you do this right, it drops the decal right where you want it to be. Nice straight line. That's an important technique to master when you're working with long road names like this one. I modeled this railroad since this railroad was created in 1993. I started modeling it around 1997. So I've done a lot of these. I'm very good at long decals in a big hurry. That's the basic technique right there. You want to keep the surface clean. You want to get your decal in place. You want to not do that. And if you do have to remanipulate, you notice I'm putting my tweezers into the empty spaces in the decal. I don't want to mark that ink. Even though the ink's on the bottom here, I could scrape right through the film into the ink, and I don't want to do that. These decals are made by Microscale. They haven't run them in quite some time, so every set that I encounter is usually an older stock set. This is Microscale set MC4132 for those who are taking notes and want to model an obscure little short line in Nova Scotia. This railroad is a 234-mile short line. It was created from CN and spun off from CN in 1993. It still operates about half the railroad. It no longer goes very far into Cape Breton Island, but it's home territory for me. I grew up along it, and When they created it, I kind of went with the change in my modeling. And they had an interesting little fleet of alcoves, and they had just an interesting short line operation. It's fun to model. Now, once we have the decals applied, we will need to talk about what to do next. So once we have our decals all applied, the next thing that would happen is you want to make sure that they settle down nicely around all the irregularities on the surface. The way I do that is I use solvents. Let me get this decal started. This is my weapon of choice. Walther's Solvaset. It's a very strong solvent. It reacts with the film and dissolves it. It makes it thinner. It doesn't dissolve it entirely, but it dissolves it partially. It softens it so it settles down better around raised details. It also thins that film quite a bit, so it appears much thinner. So when you clear coat it, it looks like the lettering is painted onto the model. Usually one application is sufficient if you got a good glossy surface. Sometimes for a stubborn decal, I'll do 2 applications and just watch for any bubbles that might form if I've not excluded all the air, and just make sure the decal settled nicely. And if I have to, I'll do an additional application of the solvent. The combination of setting solution and solvent is a very popular one. Just I find I don't need the setting solution as much as I need the solvent, so I don't use it as much. And again, there's my straight pull. Nothing does a straight line like a straight line. And then I need to reposition it slightly, so I'm just going to gradually, I'm going to move it a little bit with my tweezers on the other end and just settle it down into that end. Then I pin it in place with my tweezers and work along the length of the decal with my microbrush to work the water out from underneath. It's a very simple process. It does require practice and a certain steady hand. I'm working using an optivisor because I'm in my 50s, and it's a valuable tool. The other tool that's essential is a good set of tweezers. Something I rant about to people. If you're going to get started in model hobbies, you look for tweezers and you see professional grade tweezers, and they're not cheap. And you say, oh no, I'll just get some at the dollar store. Or I'll get some at Harbor Freight or Princess Auto or equivalent stores. It's worthwhile spending the money to get a couple of pairs of good tweezers. I have lots of tweezers from discount stores, and they do work. I have 2 good pairs. These are Dumont electronics grade tweezers. They're called Style H. The styles of tweezers actually all have names. This is called Style H. These are made in Switzerland. They're stainless steel. They're beautiful. They're also about 50 Canadian dollars a pair. I use these all the time. These are my to-go tweezers for most of my modeling. There's also these. This is a style called Style 7. You can get these from Dumont. These ones are sold by a Canadian tool company called Lee Valley Tools. They're sold as tick removal tweezers for removing tick insects from your body, because we have a lot of ticks in Canada. These sell for 3 pairs for 15 Canadian dollars. They are not as good as the Dumonts, but they're at least 70% as good, and they're better decals tweezers. So I have a pair of these. I also have a set of their cornea tweezers. I don't have them with me right now. They're ophthalmological grade surgical tweezers with a little tooth in the end of them. They're great as well for stubborn bits. So I've got that stripe applied. I'm just going to check up on my lion here. The term for this symbol, in case you're wondering, it's called a lion rampant. It's an ancient heraldic symbol used extensively by the Scots. The part of Nova Scotia where this railroad runs is central and eastern Nova Scotia, which is largely made up of Scottish settlers. Some of the place name signs in the headquarters town of the railroad are actually in English and in Scots Gaelic. It's so there's the Scottish heritage was really played up in the original livery of these locomotives. It's there. So once I've got this settled, I'm going to measure another piece of stripe to go here, because obviously one stripe's not long enough to do the job. So I get in here with my rule. That's going to be 17 scale feet. So I'm going to measure and actually cut a 17 scale foot piece of decal for this job. You can just trim decals to fit, but if you get them as close as you can before you apply them, you're going to have a lot easier time. especially since things like stripes, you only get a certain amount in a set of decals. And if you just apply it and cut away what you don't want, you may find yourself running short. So I try to be efficient with my use of decals, even with something like this where I have a lot of leftovers from these sets. Nevertheless, I still try not to waste anything if I can help it, because you never know what you're going to be able to get tomorrow. This is just a simple conspicuity stripe that's applied. It's you see it on CN locomotives. You also see it on CBNS's locomotives. And we're going to do some decal on decal work too with this model because of the stripes. So I'm just going to wait till that lays down a little bit. That should already be moving. Yep, it's ready. So I'm going to get it as close as I can get it to the end of the first decal with my tweezers. Pin it in place. Hold it backing out from underneath. I tore it a little bit. I can deal with that though. You look carefully, you can see a little corner cut out there. So what I need to do is I need to adjust that. So I'll put the remaining piece in position. It's still on the paper. Here's my little piece of stripe. As long as the decal is wet, you can move it around and you can manipulate it to what you need to do. So when I'm putting decals together, make sure I don't get my head in the way. It's important to get them, the ends like the stripes, the ends need to be lined up as closely as possible without overlapping, because the extra color density of overlapped decals will show up quite prominently in the finished model. So you try to avoid that. So again, I'm just working the water and air out from underneath the decal. Get my final positioning just so. Make sure that that extra piece is where it belongs. There's my stripe. I have another one to do on the other end. 4.5 feet. So I just take my sharp knife, measure out my 4.5 foot. This micro brush has been used quite a bit, so I'm going to change it for a fresh one. I find that refreshing those helps a lot when you're doing the blotting, because eventually these become saturated to the point where you can't even blot them out effectively. And it's important to be able to work that water out from behind the decal. It'll dry fairly quickly on its own, especially with warm water, but you want to start with as good an application as you can get. That's not quite ready. The beauty of working with water slide decals is in the last 10 or 15 years, we've had companies appear like Highball Graphics and Precision Design Corp that do very niche market models, decals. They've really taken up where we used to have companies like Champ and Harold King, who are no longer with us. Microscale don't do as much as they used to do. So these smaller companies really have been a great service to the niche modeler. They've always been around, although some of them they also did custom work. Like once upon a time, modeling this road required custom-made decals, and now you can just buy them from Microscale. A lot of those companies will do custom runs, and custom decals are far less expensive than they used to be. I've had sets made by Highball and by Precision Design, and they were very, very affordable. I had some done for the Cape Breton Development Corporation Railroad, and I only had enough done to do 4 or 5 locomotives, and it did not break the bank, because modern printers don't require the setup that silk screening does. Sometimes with decals, you can also do detailing. These locomotives were rebuilt with, instead of the oil bath filters that Alco manufactured the locomotives with, they were changed out for paper air filters with replaceable filter elements at the outside. Excuse me, on the aftercooler intake below the turbo hatch and the main intake right behind the cab. Those filters are very easy to represent. There's a layering of color to them, but Highball Graphics make decals to represent these filters. So you build up the bases, as you can see. I've built them in styrene, and I apply these decals, which have a clear and black stripe arrangement that shows the backing color. So in this case, I painted the backing color. I painted it a faint blue, oversprayed it with some burnt umber to represent a dirty filter that used to be blue. It's kind of hard to see on the camera. And then I overlay these decals, and the clear part of the decal will show the underlying color. Sometimes I'll do a locomotive. I'll do a brighter blue to indicate a very recently changed set of filters. because they're blue when they start. And then another unit I'll do that, that has, presumably has had this filters in place for a while. I'll do a dark gray or almost black, but not quite, to contrast with the locomotive with the car body, just enough to see there's a different color. And it's one of the better ways to model these filters. There was a resin filter that was made years ago that was really nice, had really nice texture to it. Unfortunately, they're no longer made. But these are the next best thing. These are available. This is accessory decal set 8037 from Highball Graphics. And there, I touched it. This is why you don't apply solvents until you're done handling the decals. Because if I bump it right now, it's not a big deal. I can just reposition it. Once I've applied my setting solution, I can't touch it. We'll hit that momentarily. So decals can be sourced. Most often I buy them directly from the manufacturer. Like I said, Highball Graphics is kind of my favorite. There's also Circus City. There is Precision Design Corporation, who do a lot of niche and Canadian stuff. There is Black Cat, who do Canadian material. There are numerous other little vendors that pop up that do specialty decals, usually for small roads, and they're the best friend of the small road modeler, because that's usually the biggest challenge for any niche model that you want to do yourself is, can I get decals for this? Can I get the lettering for this? And for many years, people didn't model, the Cape Breton Development Corporation I mentioned. That company, it was a popular potential subject for modelers I've known, but until recently, you couldn't get decals. But that changed recently, so I'm hoping to see more of that show up. You see the effect that we get here. I've got a 3D effect because I've built up the base of the filter in styrene with a little styrene raised lip around the edge. And I installed the filter decal, which represents basically they're like a furnace filter, an industrial grade furnace filter. And that just sits in there and gives me the lines for the filter bars, for the frame bars, and gives me the texture, the different colors in behind. And it's really that those filters are a distinctive feature of, if you're modeling, particularly Canadian Alco, MLW is the Canadian licensee for Alco, and if you're modeling late, Canadian Alcos that survived into the 80s and 90s, they're probably going to have this filter arrangement. CN, CP, BC Rail, they all rebuilt engines with this arrangement. I think it may have been done at MLW, so they're very common. And they show up on other locomotives as well. Just depends on who did the rebuilds. It's certainly easier than trying to model an oil bath filter. I did an Alco a while ago, and I decided I wanted to be able to see the ductwork for the oil bath filter behind the grill. So I put in a see-through grill and the whole bit on an Atlas Alco. When I was done, you could see that there was something back there, but you couldn't really see what it was. So I'm not sure it was worth the work. Another place where decals show up as details is Archer Fine Transfers. They make a line of decals that are actually resin printed on the decal film, and they apply like a decal. And they do latches, like the EMD knuckle buster latches. They do rivet lines. They do weld lines, louvers. They do some really nice stuff that apply as a decal. And with those, what you do is you apply them before you paint the model. You just put some clear coat on so that the decal will seal down nicely. And you apply them and you paint right over them. Which brings me to the subject of clear coat. So for the glossy finish, there are numerous ways to do a glossy finish for decals. The simplest one is, of course, to use glossy paint. And that does work fine. Or semi-gloss paint. The old scale coat line, one of its great attributes was it had a semi-gloss finish that took decals beautifully. You don't always have the color you want in a glossy finish, though. So generally, I apply a gloss finish afterwards. This model is painted with the Vallejo NATO Black, which is a flat finish, and I applied a clear gloss over it. There are numerous ones manufactured by the various paint manufacturers, but the one I use and have used for a long, long time is a floor cleaning product that used to be sold as Future. And what it actually is a acrylic clear gloss. And it is nice and thin, sprays through the airbrush really well. A couple of coats gives you a really nice finish. It dries very quickly, so you can recoat when you can recoat almost immediately. It cleans up with water or Windex. I usually flush my airbrush with Windex when I'm working with acrylics. It levels beautifully, self-levels beautifully, and it's inexpensive. A 1 liter bottle of Future is like 15 Canadian dollars. Vice a bottle this size of clear gloss from Vallejo or anybody else is going to be, half that much for a tiny little bottle. It is no longer sold as Future. They changed the name. Pledge. S.C. Johnson brought it under the Pledge line for a while, and it was sold as Pledge Floor Gloss. It also is sold now. Currently, it's sold as Quick Shine. Is a green label, and it's available at any hardware store, anywhere cleaning products are sold. And it is a really nice, just a really user friendly clear gloss. I've tried ones made by model paint manufacturers, and I keep going back to the Quick Shine / Pledge / Future. It just works. Something I learned from my airplane modeling days a long, long time ago, and I haven't seen anything come along better. And it stands up very well too. It's a durable finish. When you're applying the detail parts I mentioned that come as decals, just placing it, I just put a few drops of that on the model and apply the decal immediately. I don't even wait for the material for the finish to dry, because it'll just bond to the decal film and stick it in place really nicely. For example, some of these locomotives were rebuilt with EMD style door hinges, and I used Archer decals to replicate that. And this one has Alco door hinges, which I did with wire, but Alco door latches rather, which I did with wire, just to enhance the detailing. Once you're done your decals, you've got them settled, and if you've used your setting solution, that's dried out. The next thing that's important to do, and this is a step that's very important, is a clear coat of gloss again over the top of the decals. That is kind of if there's a secret to doing decals, that may be it, is to sandwich the decal material between 2 layers of the same gloss coat. Doesn't matter what one you use, just put another layer of gloss over it. The reason is simple. Every time you have light striking 2 different materials, it's going to reflect 2 different ways, no matter what you do. So if I put a layer of clear flat over this, no matter how well I do this decal, you're going to be able to see the faintest outline of this decal, because the flat coat is going to react differently with this clear gloss than it is with this film. But if you put a layer of clear gloss over this first, that will level everything out, and it will homogenize the surface, and the glossy finishes will, I don't want to say equalize, but it will do a lot to homogenize the finish in such a way that when you apply flat over it, as far as your eye is concerned, the reflectance is going to be the same between the 2 areas. I don't really have the scientific knowledge to articulate how that works, but it does. I can tell you that. I can tell you that my decal work got a lot better when I started taking the time, put another layer of clear gloss over the decals. It sounds like a lot of layers, because you don't want to build up too much thick paint. But with modern acrylic finishes, it doesn't build up. It doesn't build up significantly. It's not visible, and it makes a very big difference in how the finished product will look. I guess that's my secret sauce. I mentioned decals over decals. I'm going to do that right now. So, over the yellow, I need to put a few supplementary things, such as the markings for which corner of the locomotive you're at, because this railroad marked all 4 corners, and also a warning that the locomotive has no footboards, because you don't want to be trying to step on a footboard that isn't there. So those decals are provided in the sheet. So I'm just going to make sure I've got the right ones lined up here. the right rear. Just I wait for this first decal to dry up a little bit, and then I can apply the second one. There's a cat hair in there. How did that happen? Here's the right rear. And here's the front right. Rear right and front right, I guess not. Right rear, rear right. One thing about doing this type of work is you have to source. The decal set you can get doesn't always have everything you want. For example, this set, there's a couple of little things missing. Most notably, a piece of a legend, a marking that shows the name of the company that manufactured the graphics that were used on the locomotive. It was part of it was something they did. They acknowledged the graphics company for whatever reason. I don't have that marking, but it's a very small decal and it's almost impossible to read in HO. So I just picked a line of text decal from another set that was the right size and the right length and the right length of words, and I put it on upside down. The reason I did that is your brain will register. You can read text at a remarkably small size if it looks like text. But the smaller it is, the more difficult it is to see, the less your brain will rationalize it. So something this large, you can read upside down without difficulty. Something that size, less so. That's one way of disguising that you don't have the right decal in there. I've done some pre-cutting here just to speed up the process with the numbers that I need. Most manufacturers provide a useful selection of numbers. This company's set includes a number of correct numbers for these locomotives, but the one that I want is, of course, not pre-done, so I have to do 3 decals to get it. That's not so bad. It is useful to have at least 2 of the numbers together because then I can line them up more easily. Take the excess water out, lay that on, and line that up with the cab. There we go. So that just lies on there. Meanwhile, I'm going to go back and make sure the finish is good on this one. This is one of the first ones I did. I see a hair stuck in there. I have cats, so there's usually hairs on things. So I'm always careful to make sure there's no hairs on the model before it gets clear coated. Because once it's clear coated, it's on forever. So this, sometimes the right, the correct numbers and letters for various paint outs and various schemes can be tricky to find. Most manufacturers make alphanumeric sets though, that you can put together what you need. Microscale do a set with the correct font for these locomotives, but obviously it already has what I need. And sometimes you can do variations. A few years back, I modeled one of this company's later locomotives where they, instead of having the full name, they had the abbreviation CB and CNS Railway. And I wanted to model that, and the lettering was no big deal because it was the same lettering they'd used before. The problem was the periods between the initials. And after a lot of thinking, I looked at this and realized this font is a serif font, and the serifs on the numbers are little round blobs. So I skipped my coffee that day, and I cut out the little blobs off the numbers to make the periods. Sometimes you have to do silly things like that to make something stand out. But that's what we do because we're modelers. Yeah. nose. That'll be ready for solvent set soon. And you can see I'm just methodically working through the whole lettering of the side. There's no real secret to what order to do things in, except that I usually work on one surface at a time. I try not to work I try to work on one side or one end and get everything the way I want it, and then can dry it on, and solvent applied and dried and ready to clear coat, and then I do another side. So on this one, I've already done the nose, and I've already done the opposite side, so we can see how the decals go. The other thing about these is that the decal sets often will give you shortcuts, which are convenient, but not always what you want. This set, for example, the chevrons that are provided are actually one piece of film. So you can apply them as one complete decal that takes up the whole end of the locomotive. Now, you can do that, although for this one, I cut the stripes out individually because that reduces the amount of film that's in between them, and just the film is another layer. So I try to only have decals where I need them. I try to minimize how much empty film is on the model because that will affect how it goes. Where did that go? Oh yes, it's in the water. Excuse me. So this decal has run away on me. It's come off the film, off the paper in the water. So what I have to do is I'm going to chase it in the water ever so gently with a piece of paper and lift it out of the water, supporting the entire decal on the paper. That's the important part, because if it doesn't, it'll twist like that. Now I have it upside down, no problem. And just get the edge of it clear of the film paper, grab it with my little tweezers, flip it over. If a decal gets twisted in the water on you, and it does happen, the easiest way to deal with that is to get it into the water again and just let it float free, and it will usually float. It will usually untangle itself in the water. Just the whole thing will want to untangle and float in a straight line. And that's how you deal with that. It's also why you keep a little bit of the decal paper handy, the backing paper. That's handy to have because you can pick up loose decals in the water. Another hair. It's a good thing I like that cat. I live in a small house, so a separated hobby room just for me is with no animals, no other people, is just not in the cards. But you'd be amazed what you can do. I have no footboard, and then we can talk about solvent a little more. I wouldn't say there's a right and a wrong solvent to use. I'm a fan of Solvaset, but I also have Microsol, mainly because I went shopping for Solvaset and couldn't find it. It is a little more difficult to get sometimes, at least around here. But it's, you find a process that works for yourself and you use it. If somebody else has an idea, try it out. Doesn't always work for everybody. Back in my earlier days of modeling, I didn't have access to a hobby shop nearly as easily as I do now. It was a 2-hour drive to any hobby shop, and they may or may not have anything I need. So when I started working with decals and I couldn't find any solvent, I experimented with the liquid plastic cement as a decal setting solution, which will dissolve the film, also dissolve the paint in the model. I used it a few times as I called it the ultimate horror weapon against a decal that did not want to settle down, but I don't recommend it. But needs must. So I mentioned solvent before. Some of the first decals I put on are dry enough, so I'm just going to apply this. I'm going to put it around, the first application will be around the edges, because most of what I want is this material under the film. That's where it really can do its good. And this one I'm just going to apply over the entire decal. And that'll wick underneath and across the top, and that will dissolve the film ever so slightly, will soften it up. So once you've done that, you're done touching that decal. Somebody asked me lately, how long do you have after you apply the solvent to move the decal? I said, a few seconds. He said, oh. I said, when did you apply the decal? He said, 3 days ago. I said, yeah, that's not going to work. That's dried on. That's basically paint now. Like that. see, I lightly and quickly went across where the multiple decals are because I don't want those to move on me. You can reposition it; they move, but it's very touchy work because everything is softened up, and you're probably going to distort or tear the decal. But it does make a huge difference to have them snuggled down properly into the paint. When you're doing weathering, you can see a little bit here. I've got some orange showing. I've done some pre-weathering work on this model to simulate where the black has worn off and the original owner's paint is showing underneath. I did that work before I did the decals. And once I've got these the way I want them, I will then look and see if there's anywhere I should distress the lettering to match those areas. Although very often, modern lettering is usually not painted on. It's usually adhesive decals itself. So what you often will see is paint will be flaking, but it'll be held on behind that lettering. So you'll have very readable lettering that's almost totally intact, but the paint's flaking off between the letters. And even behind them, there'll be the outline of where it's starting to break free, but the lettering is actually holding on the paint. So that's the kind of effect you need to think about when you're planning your paint work and your decorating work, because it really does take forethought. That's just part of the process. I find this, once you get in the groove, it's a very zen process, and it's very easy to do. And with that, I think that's all I really have to say on the subject of decaling. I mean, I can sit here for another half hour, and you guys can watch me do it. But really, the what it boils down to is a smooth, shiny finish. Care with trimming and applying your decals, especially around the ink. Try not to damage the ink. Using the solvents to soften the decal into the paint so they're equalized. Overcoating with another coat of gloss to seal the decals down. Then once you've done your weathering and anything else you're going to do, usually I do a final flat coat. My preference is Tester's dull coat because it's a very durable lacquer finish. So I'll usually apply that, and that plays nice with the floor finish. It also plays nice with the Vallejo paints, so you don't have to worry about damaging any paintwork. And once I've done that, everything's sealed up and the model's ready to be handled. And that's really the gist of my process of decals.
Ready for some questions?
I'd be delighted to answer questions.
When do you use the solver set? Once you put the decal down and the paper has been removed?
Yes. Yeah, I applied. Usually the decal has been applied and it's had a few minutes to start to dry. Then I apply the solvacet. I don't want the decal. The decal looks dry. It's ready for solvacet. And once you've hit it with solvacet, you're done handling that decal. It's wherever it's going to be forever. That's
how do you avoid the ghosting effect around the decal?
Ghosting is another name for silvering, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. The gloss finish under the decal is the most important part, followed by solvents or setting solutions as required, and then overcoating with clear gloss again before your final coat, and that should eliminate your ghosting.
Okay. Can you save older paint jobs where this ghosting has happened?
That's an excellent question. I have seen people attempt it. It is pretty difficult to do much with it because what you're trying to do is get rid of air that's underneath the decal. If it has ghosted and you haven't done anything else to it, if you apply the decal and there's nothing on top of it, it's never had solvents, then you might be able to do something using solvents. But once the decal is sealed on, there really isn't a whole lot you can do about ghosting. The best thing to do, what you do about it is you prevent it, really.
Okay. How do you feel about decal weathering? You might have covered that, but someone asked a question.
Decal weathering? You mean like pre-printed weathering? Like rust streaks and such like?
After you put the decal on and then you apply weathering.
So decal weathering. I wonder if he means like the rust streak decals you can get, things like that. I haven't used them much, but I'm intrigued by them. I usually use other materials to do my rust streaking. Weathering the decals, though, that is something I will do sometimes. if, like I said, I have some distressed paint here, I'm going to look after the decals have dried, and I might distress the decals where the paint has been distressed, so they line up. Especially if I look at the nose here, you can see where there's paint showing through, where the crew have been walking on the locomotive and rubbed away paint. So
Yep.
I will distress the yellow stripes to match that.
Okay. What's the difference? Are one better than the other? Custom order decals or inkjet printed ones?
You can do decals as good as any other custom ones using an inkjet printer. Um, that being said, most office grade inkjet printers that we use at home are not as good as the printers that are used by the custom companies. So for a one-off, I'd consider doing my own using an inkjet printer. I've done it a couple of times. For anything involved, though, I mean the expense of getting custom decals done really is like, it's not like it used to be. It used to be, hundreds of dollars to get a few sets, and now the last time I ordered, the setup charge was, well, the setup charge was 2 digits. It was I want to say $50. I don't think it was even that much. And then after that, the art was done, and that producer would produce decals for me based on the square inches of material that we were using. And so the cost per set, after I paid the setup charge, the cost per incremental cost for each additional set I had made, oh, I'm going to say it was twice as much as buying a pre-made set of decals, but I had exactly what I wanted. I didn't have to adapt anything. It certainly, didn't break the bank. But, inkjet decals at home, they're worth a try because you can do some interesting variations.
And in these cases, you designed the artwork yourself. You said I would
In those cases, I did not do the artwork myself. That setup charge was based on supplying images of what I wanted and dimensions and paint color and ink colors. I had to work with them on colors. So I gave them, what I ended up giving them was I painted a couple of, so for the lettering colors, I mixed up the paints that I wanted. I got the colors I wanted. I airbrushed color chips for each color I wanted and sent them to the maker, along with a note that gave him the portions of the paints I had used to create those colors. So if he wanted to reproduce them, he could. And it was, and he did what he did, graphics design work, and produced, within a few days, he had what I wanted. It was,
okay.
I was frankly astonished how quickly it could be done if you get a good artist.
So where do you get your reference photos to use when you apply the decals?
That's an excellent question. The short answer, anywhere I can find them. Railroadpicturearchives.net is an excellent resource, along with railpictures.ca. And I ask among friends. I have my own photographs I took, years and years ago of these railroads. And among modelers that I talk to, we sometimes talk about this and we share pictures. If we see something we know the other individual is interested in that railroad, we will actually, send them a picture, say, hey, have you seen this picture?
Cool.
So
Okay, last
basically
question.
anywhere I can. Yes.
How do you know when the blade gets too dull?
Usually I want it to cut all the way through the paper on the first pass. If I have to make a second pass, I start looking for my spare blades and say, okay, time to put a new blade in. I buy blades in 100 packs because life is too short to use dull X-Acto blades.
Yes. So did you just use a number 11 blade or?
Yeah, I just use number 11. I sometimes use, for a lot of other things, I sometimes use a number 16, I think it is. It's called a stencil blade, this one.
Okay.
And I use that for chiseling, but sometimes for cutting decals out, I'll just find that shape works a little better for certain shapes. But generally, I just use number 11.
I have a much thinner blade that comes in a plastic in a packaging thing, almost like it's a medical blade. And I don't know what it's called.
Like a scalpel.
Yes, and those are extremely sharp.
I know people that, I know a lot of people that use surgical scalpels, but I started with X-Acto, and I like using them, and they're easy to source. I can buy them on buy them in quantity. Although these days you can buy anything you want on Amazon.
Well,
Amazon is
thank
your
you.
friend.
Thank you
I'm
very, very
delighted,
much for an excellent clinic.
delighted to do it.
Let's see, there's no other questions. So, Brad, with that, I think you give us some elevator music and take us off the air.
Welcome back to the third part of NMRAx. Today, we actually have my good friend Richard Frazier, and I am filling in, and I said his name, I'm not supposed to, but since I'm filling in, I get to say it more than once. I'm filling in as host for Speed, and obviously I'm not in a Helix either. But I'm excited for this presentation. I think you're going to love it, and I'm going to go ahead and read the intro. So our next speaker is a longtime model railroader, starting out like most of us with the Lionel sat under the Christmas tree, switching to HO scale while in high school, and then settling into N scale in adulthood. Over the next 4 decades, he participated with several clubs and organizations in Oklahoma, Texas, and now in Colorado. He has presented across the country on a variety of model railroading topics, including the future of model railroading and how model trains are made. Some of you may recognize him from having previously worked at Intermountain Railway Company and attending shows across the country. Currently, he's a member of the Boulder Model Railroad Club. He volunteers at the Colorado Model Railroad Museum, where I'm from, and he's on the board of the Northern Colorado Model Railroad Club. And in his spare time, he operates the online model train store, yardselltrains.com. Please welcome my friend, Richard Frazier.
Hey, thank you, Michelle. It's good to be here. Before I just dive into the things that I'm going to cover, I always like to ask a few questions of the audience and, find out what we all have in common, right? And I think that we all think N scale is the best scale ever. Is that right? Maybe not. We think Santa Fe is the best railroad ever to exist, right? Maybe not. Uh, Many of us think that ready to run is evil, right? So, but no, actually, the only thing that we have in common is we are all getting older. Okay. So, what happens to your model trains and layout when you are gone? So, who am I? As you heard, I used to work at Intermountain. I was in charge of marketing and customer service. Currently, I am also a state and donation coordinator for the Northern Colorado Model Railroad Club, so I deal with a lot of estates. And then I have my own, there's my shameless plug for yardselltrains.com. And yes, I am an N scale guy. So the things that we're going to cover today, it's harsh realities, right? I'm not going to hold any punches back. Some of this is going to be kind of direct. Also, how do we plan for what's going to come, right? And what's the impact if we don't plan, right? So, and then, if you don't plan for things, it's not going to go the way you think. And even if you do plan, it's not going to go the way you think. So get over it, right? So, but what should be the desired outcome? Now, the first thing I want to talk about is model train layouts. Now, anybody ever tried to sell a model train layout? It's actually kind of hard, right? And really, I thought about this for a long time, and I had to come to the conclusion that I had to understand, well, what is a model train layout, right? And if you put 50 modelers in a room, you'll get 50 different answers, okay? But the really reality is a model train layout is somebody's dream. And I don't care if it's a 2-foot by 2-foot little module that sits in the corner or a 5,500 square foot museum, it's somebody's dream. The problem with that, it's not your dream. So it's not your space or your scale or your railroad or your location. Okay? So everybody has their own vision and dream of what their model railroad is going to look like. When it comes to selling it, the things that come into play is space, right? Few people have the instant space to take on a full-size layout. I don't know anybody that's got a spare bedroom that they're waiting for the right layout to come on sale so they can put it in there. So it's we just don't have the space for those or to take one. It's the wrong era or the wrong railroad. Does it even match my desires? If I like modeling the Rock Island, I'm probably not interested in Santa Fe in Arizona, right? Logistics. Can it even be moved with what I call intensity? A good friend of mine, he has an N-scale layout. He's not well. I have an empty basement, so maybe I can move his layout. But the effort it would take to cut it up, take it around the corner, up the stairs, load it in the truck, get it to my place, down the stairs, around the corner, it just becomes too much. and isn't worth it, right? And it wouldn't be worth it to me when it was all said and done. So the harsh reality, there's a high probability that the layout will be disassembled and trashed. So how do you do that? How do you take apart a layout? Did you even plan for this when you built it? Can you even plan for it? The answer is yes, you can plan for this. So start now. So here's a homework assignment for you. Uh, Go sit in your layout room. Don't run any trains, but just look at your layout. You built it, you were there. So what does it take to take it apart? Did you plan to have it disassembled? Or is it going to have to be sliced and diced, right? You know, if it's going to be disassembled, does anybody but you know how to do this? We were taking apart a layout. We were about a third of the way through, and we started noticing some interesting connectors, and we figured out that the layout could have been disassembled, but we didn't know that. So find out, if you have that, we need to understand and know that so that the people that are going to be dealing with this are ready. And if it's going to have to be sliced and diced, where's the best place to cut, right? That would be good for us to know because the number one tool used for taking apart a layout is a sawzall. This is the 15 amp model, by the way. It'll cut through anything. Right? So build a plan and create a notebook. And I'm going to talk about this notebook a lot. And you want to leave this notebook where it can be found, right? Don't put it on the shelf with the books. We'll never see it. Don't put it in the safe. We won't remember it's there, right? Put it by the layout. I suggest always getting one of those little mail file folders that you can get at the office supply house, mount it to the wall, put the notebook there. And it'll be a great access point for when those folks are having to deal with your layout, they'll be able to find it and deal with your layout appropriately. Also, find out who gets what. Right? If you've got a fully developed layout and you've got operators and operating sessions going on regularly, ask, it's kind of a weird conversation, I'll admit, but ask people what they would like to have if you were gone. Right? And be ready to be surprised. Right? You may have an operator who always likes to work at the coal mine, and so you're thinking, oh, they'll want something from the coal mine. Instead, they'll say, no, I want something from the milk creamery that you have over there. That would look great, and I'd love to have that. So if you like them well enough, put it in the book. Put it in a notebook that person gets that particular item off of your layout. Also, how do you remove all the electronics? And where are they? And what are they? Okay. Electronics are becoming more and more. So where are those at? And this also, stripping the layout, taking the things off, buildings, scenery, especially trees, right? No model railroader ever said they had enough trees, right? So trees are always popular. The track, how's the track attached? I know that there's 100 different religions when it comes to attaching track to layouts, and sometimes it's very easy to get it up, and sometimes it's put down with liquid nails and it'll never be removed, right? So let us know how things are on there so we can get them off. So when it comes to disassembling a layout, if the people that are left behind that are going to be dealing with this, and many, many times it's a spouse, right? If they're not prepared for this, it's going to be very traumatic for them. And it's important enough, I'm going to say that again, right? If they're not prepared, it will be overly traumatic for them. So make sure they're prepared for what's going to happen, okay? And know how it's going to be done for your layout. Let us know. Put that in the book. And no, we're not going to take out the 1,100 screws that are holding together, okay? We're going to roll in there. It's going to be fast, it's going to be loud, and it's going to be dramatic. And I can assure you that no room looks sadder and more barren and more empty and more abandoned than a room that was filled with a model train layout the day before. Okay? So make sure they know how it's going to come apart. It's important, and Like I said, it is very traumatic for them. This is something that they know you loved, that you participated in, that you had friends over, that you dealt with on a regular basis, if not daily, okay? Then they need to know how it's going to come apart and what that experience is going to be like. So, what about all the other stuff besides the layouts? Okay. Do you have an inventory of it? Right? No one does. Don't worry about it. If you think you do and you go to a train show and you buy 10 things, well, guess what? Your inventory's out of date, right? But we can take what you have and break it down into basic categories. Basic category: engines, rolling stock, structures and scenery, the electronics, books and memorabilia, and photographs and videos. So, starting out with engines, the engines are probably the most valuable item that you have, right? You spend the most money for these. The technology in these has come a long way, so we have sound and DCC controlled. But also, when you're doing this, we have to consider: is it brass? Is it custom? Is it unique? Is it what age is it? Is there an emotional connection with this as well? Right? We have to understand those. And also, where are the boxes? Okay, put all the boxes in a labeled box that we can find. Right? They dealt with an estate. There were no boxes. 3 months go later, they're actually finally moving out of the house. Oh, hey, we found the boxes. They were upstairs under the stairs, right? So it doesn't do any good at that point. So where are the boxes? And also put a piece of paper in there to tell us about the item, right? If it's DCC, who's the manufacturer of the decoder? Does it have sound? All those things are very helpful when we're trying to deal with what's there. And do you want some of these to go to very specific people and or organizations? So put that in the notebook as well. Right? If you have someone that you're friends with, or a modeler or operator, and they want something, put it in the book so it's no question about it. So rolling stock, probably the largest and least valuable of the items you have. All right, you'll have a lot of them most likely, and they're going to range in price that you've paid over the years and stuff. But also, same thing. We want to consider the sound, custom, unique, age, emotional, impact of some of these cars. Was this your very first car when you were a kid, right? Was it dad's car, right? So keep that in mind. Also, where are the boxes? Okay. And also, put that piece of paper in there and tell us there's something unique. Imagine my surprise when I put that stock car on the track and it mooed at me. Okay. So let us know if it's a sound car. The mechanical reefers now have sound, so let us know that when we're putting it away. Also, do some of these go to specific people or organizations? I'd work in a state now. One of the members used to work at the same place that the person that passed, and they want the cars from Eastman Kodak, right? So find out if there's specific people that they would go to. Now, structures and scenery is probably the most awkward and hardest to deal with. They're very fragile. They're light. Non-trained folks don't know how to deal with them well, so they can get broken easily and stuff. So those are tricky to work with. But if you've got a fully developed layout, many of your operators would love to have an item or two from your layout to add to their own, right? So ask that question. Anything on here you'd like to have, who would get it, right? And you can charge them, right? You don't have to give it to them, right? You can charge them. So you just got to let us know how much, right? Also, removing things from your layout can be tedious. So put in your notebook how things are attached, right? So if you've glued everything down, how did you glue it down, right? So let us know so that we can be prepared to get it off if that's possible, right? Also, we all have used scenery elements: ground cover, flock, glue, ballast, etc. That needs to be donated. Pick someone you like that can take advantage of it and go from there and stuff. So, okay. Electronics. Now, this can be large money real fast. Okay. DCC systems are not cheap. Half price for complete systems can still be hundreds of dollars. All right. So, where are they at, right? Tell us, what other stuff you have out there, right? There's a lot of add-ons that we see today that we didn't used to see. From signals and Arduinos and Raspberries, short circuits, tortoise, all these things have value and stuff. And let us know where they're at, okay? Because if we don't know where they're at, I can assure you that a Sawzall can slice a booster in half with very little effort. So let us know. Another thing is if you've ran electricity through your layout, it's good for us to know that too. Layout rooms are really dark when you pop the breaker after cutting the wire. Okay, so let us know where that stuff is at. So books and memorabilia. Okay, how many of us have books, right? All of us, right? So magazines are a hard sell. Thank the internet, right? Very few people have a desire to obtain more magazines. Most are wanting to get rid of them. Find organizations that will use these for the kids to give them something. At the museum, when kids show up, there's a box of magazines, and to get out, we make sure they have to take a magazine with them, right? So find places that have kids that they'll enjoy them and stuff. So, okay. Books can be a hard sell, except in rare cases. You're not gonna get what you paid for it, right? Not even close. The books just don't have a value that retains like you would see in some of your model train items and stuff like that. But also create a list and note those that are signed or special, right? So if you got a signed copy of something, that'll carry a little value or a little significance and stuff. So make sure that you capture that if you can and stuff. Now, for those of you that have extensive collections, I don't have any connection with this organization, but I use them. It's called Library Thing. It's web-based. They've got an app for your phone, which I use. It helps me not buy the same book twice. Okay, so one of the advantages of working for Intermountain was I went to an awful lot of shows, and I kid you not, I went over, oh, this is a great book. I should get this, and I did. And 6 months later, I'm at another show, and I found the book again, and I thought it was a great book, so I bought it again. So I have 3 copies now. So I started using this to help me prevent that activity and stuff. All right. And railroad stuff. All right. This is all that's things that we've all collected, from lanterns and plates and signs and artwork and spikes and rails and the list goes on and on. This is not anywhere near a complete list. And we all have all that. And this stuff is brutal to establish any kind of value. Okay. Some of it may be even one of a kind. Okay. Now, one of a kind may mean you were the one that wanted it. Okay. That's fair. But also, it could mean that so many other people want it, it would sell for stupid amounts. Okay. So be sure and note those in the notebook as to what you have and stuff. But if you don't have enough books, right, a fun website that you can check out is Olibris. It's like an umbrella website that connects hundreds of independent booksellers. So you can go out there and find any number of books from any number of places and stuff. So check it out if you need more books. So. Now, photographs and videos, this is tricky, right? Because you may have a picture of 4014 crossing Sherman Hill in 1940s, right? Or is it 4014 excursion train in 2019, right? So if we don't know what you have, it becomes a bit tricky. I took this picture from railpictures.net. Ryan was the photographer for this. So we need to know what you have, all right? And this is part of the curse of the digital world, right? What do you have? Is it all yours? Is it others? Is it both? So that's part of the challenge. How do you have it? Is it slides, negatives? Is it digital? Is it CD? Is it VHS? Is there some media that you have? So where is it at, right? And who can get to it and how can they get to it? It does no good to have it on your laptop if you've got a password on it that no one knows. Okay. So figure out who's going to be able to get to this and access it. And does it have value? And the short answer is yes, it kind of does, especially in some interesting cases. And I brought this one up because I thought this was just kind of fun. A few years back, BNSF did heritage cars out of their hoppers, right? And they took several of the logos from past predecessor railroads, put them on their cars. They did a GN heritage car, BNSF 489367. From what I understand, that car was wrecked 3 or 4 days after it was put out on the railroad. Okay? There's no known photograph of this car. Right? At least none that we know of. Right? Somebody probably has a picture of it because it was a neat car, right? It had a different logo on it. Somebody would have seen that and went, "Oh, that's cool," and taken the picture of it. They don't realize that they may have the only existing photo of that. Now it lays on the side of the ditch up in Wyoming. It's been there for I think like 9 or 10 years now. So we can still go get a picture of it, but it doesn't look to be in the best of shape right now. So when it comes to that, document it somehow. I'm not even going to begin to tell how to do this. There are just so many different ways that some people find it easier to do it one way versus another. So you'll have to find the way that works for you. My wife does genealogy. She runs across the same issue where they have all these family photos. How do you organize them? And everybody's got an opinion, so you got to figure out the one that works for you, but get it documented somehow, all right? And make sure others know about it, know how it is. Also, do you have any last day photographs or videos, right? And what I mean by last day is, the last days of the KCS before they were taken over, Rock Island, Santa Fe, all of these. If you have any of those are the ones that people will have a lot of interest in and will be interested in acquiring or obtaining copies of. Okay? And start now. We have a lot of pictures. A friend of mine recently passed a year or so ago. He has over a 500,000, yes, 500,000 pictures of Santa Fe, right? That he had taken and acquired over the years and stuff. So there's an awful lot of photos that you may have that you need to get documented and stuff. What we want to know is the where. Where was the picture taken? When was it taken? Any details that you can provide about it would be worthwhile and stuff. Okay. Now, if you don't plan, it's going to ensure everything you didn't expect, right? So you want to make sure you do plan for the inevitable of how you're going to handle this. If you don't plan, the kids may rent a dumpster. And yes, it is true, brass locomotives have been thrown away, right? So make a plan so that they can follow it. The people that are going to have to deal with this are going through a large emotional toll, especially if it's a spouse, right? And they're going to try to guess what you would have wanted. So don't make them guess at a time when they're not really emotionally ready for that. Okay? And without any kind of guidance, they will make mistakes. And there's story after story of folks who didn't even know what they had. They just wanted to get rid of it, and they made serious mistakes in trying to get rid of it and stuff. So also, be realistic, okay? We all love our stuff, right? We have great appreciation for what we've done. Our friends have appreciation for what we've done, but be realistic with it. Don't tell your family, "Oh, I've got $10,000 invested in the layout." That may be a true statement, right? But don't stop with that, right? Go ahead and tell them that, and you're probably not going to get more than $50 for the whole thing, right? If that, right? Let them know and understand, because if they hear you got $10,000 in it, they're going to feel like they failed if they don't get it that or get some money out of selling it, which they may not, right? So I strongly encourage you to plan. Create that notebook that folks can find. Okay. The structure of your notebook doesn't really matter, right? I prefer English, but I know this is an international group, so that's probably a little arrogant. So, put it in a structured language. If it's a French or Italian or Canadian or Australian or Texan, whatever, right? Put it in a language that folks can understand. There's no right or wrong way, right? There's no template that you should follow. It's just got to be understandable, right? So make sure that the folks that are going to have to deal with it can understand what's there. If your writing's really bad, maybe type it, okay? So document about the layout, who gets what, how's it come apart, Where's stuff located in there when we start? We don't tear anything up, right? Document about the items, right? Boxes, who gets what are the special notes we need, and decide on who's going to take on the effort, right? If you can, right? If it's going to be your spouse, that's one thing. Is the kids, or is it going to be somebody else that you trust, a family friend or somebody like that? They don't necessarily have to be a trained person, right? You just got to give them the guidance to go to the right people to help, right? And don't be nebulous. I know this is probably the feeling of many people, but it's let the kids have what they want, and after that I don't care. Well, the problem is the people that are dealing with this, they do care that you cared about it when you were alive. So don't leave them with a nebulous feeling of, well, I don't really know, right? What he would have wanted, right? So if they can't figure out what you would have wanted, well, they're going to struggle. So give them a more clear picture of what you think should happen, right? And then they'll have a plan and they can work through that a lot easier. And the notebook is what makes it work, right? That notebook makes it so much easier for anybody that's going to have to deal with it, right? And so make sure you take the effort to create that going forward. Okay? So now I'm going to kind of change directions a little bit. We'll throw a note in there if you do have any questions. Post your questions, and we'll get to those here at the end and stuff. So we'll get those taken care of for you. But now talk about how if we get to a point where we need to dispose of stuff, what are some of the ways that we can do that? So I've been asked that a lot, so I thought I'd just put together a little bit of kind of the how do I get rid of things, right? What are some of the options? You know, do you not care? Just be donated. Well, how would you want it to be donated to who and how and stuff? Do you want someone to receive benefit from your investment? Right? You got money in this, right? This stuff ain't free, right? That's for sure, right? So what are the paths to get rid of these things that you have the best way? And who do you or they call? All right, so is it Ghostbusters? I don't know, right? But so some of the past, so start out with different ones, and this one is you've all heard of eBay, or most of us have. It's global. This will have the pros. I'm gonna show pros and cons, right? So the pros for eBay, it's got the largest audience, right? It's a global audience. You most times are gonna obtain the highest gross price, right? Because you have a large audience and stuff. There are a lot of tools for doing marketing and promoting items available on eBay. It's a very mature platform. It's been around for almost 3 decades now. And you can do auction style, or you can even do buy it now, just set a price and sell it and stuff. Some of the cons, it has the highest cost to sell items, right? So you're paying a premium for the other features. It also takes a lot of effort, right? They have very strict rules about how things are presented on the site, and pictures and packing and shipping and descriptions and stuff. So there's a fair amount of work that goes into setting one of these up. You kind of have to decide if this is the path you want to go. You also will get to deal with a lot of strange people, right? So I've had a huge experience with different odd folks, to put it politely. I was selling, wasn't a train thing, but I was selling a 9-drawer triple dresser. That was the description, 9-drawer triple dresser. And the question I received from a potential buyer was, how many drawers does it have? So I just didn't even know how to answer that question, right? So, and stuff. So you're going to get some odd folks along the way. Another platform, global presence, is Facebook, Facebook Marketplace. You have access to a larger audience if you ship, and smaller if you don't, right? So if you don't want to ship, you can do it this way. You set the price and list the item. You can list an item really fast with a smartphone. And it can happen really quickly. Listed something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They were there at 5 o'clock to pick it up because I didn't get off work at 4 when they wanted to be there. So, it can go very quickly. It's cheap to do, right? It doesn't cost anything if it's sold locally, and it's only 5% if it's shipped. So it has that feature to it. You may not obtain the best price, right? You're just setting a price, and it may or may not be the best price that you could have gotten, but it is what it is. Also, expect folks that are going to want to haggle. They're not really being rude. It's just the way the platform's designed. So it's kind of like those garage sales, when you go in and there's a genuine Rembrandt there, and if it was $100, somebody's going to offer you 80, right? So it's just the way they work. So be prepared for that. And you may not be comfortable having people come to your house, right? So you can set a meeting place. There are different places around town that even Facebook will recommend you go to meet, to exchange items and stuff. Also, watch for scammers. Facebook has done an awful lot of work to try to help prevent this, but evil people are evil and they're good at it. So be on the lookout for that as you go through that process. Now, this one's very US centric, and it's not the only platform. It's just one I just given as an example. It's called Auction Ninja. This is for handling estate sales, right? So you can do things the same way. You have access to a larger audience if you ship, because you can do it nationally. Smaller if you don't, but it's not as niche. It's not, they're not categories directly related to model trains. But gosh, it's easy to do, right? Just get a good picture and a short description. And then when I mean short description, you can say HO locomotive, and that can be the end of your description, right? So it runs like an auction, but it extends with each bid as you get closer. So eBay is notorious for that last second bidding because the auction ends at a very specific time. Uh, in the Auction Ninja world, if you bid in the last 2 minutes, it automatically extends at 5, right? So you can see auctions that will extend, for an hour or two if there are a few people who want it and stuff. You do about 100 to 400 lots at once, and there can be no shipping, and everyone will come to you and pick it up. Okay. Once again, you may not obtain the best price because you're not focused just on model railroad folks, but gets it gone. It costs us more than Facebook, it's less than eBay. And on pickup day, you're going to need help because the way you set it up is you say, okay, pickup is going to be Sunday afternoon between 1 and 4. Well, at 12:30, there's going to be a line of 50 people outside waiting for you to open, and you're going to need help giving them all the stuff that they've bought and paid for and stuff. So just be prepared for that if you go this path and stuff. Now, this can be done, as an individual or through an estate sales agent. We see this a lot if the overall estate is also being liquidated along with the model trains, right? Sometimes it's all things have to go because they were the last person there. So kids don't want the house, or there's no kids, or whatever. Then everything has to go and stuff. So you have a garage sale. So this is a one-time event. It's exposed to the right customer because the only people that show up to the model train garage sale are model train folks, and occasionally the person that's walking down the street wondering what's going on. Right? If it's priced right, a lot of it's going to move very quickly. It also gets things to the local folks that may have known the modeler, right? So that makes it kind of special for everybody involved because it goes to folks that they would have known, and they'll appreciate it more and stuff. You advertise this to your local clubs and entities. We actually have a garage sale going on actually next Saturday, and I've advertised to all the clubs up and down the Front Range, which basically goes from Cheyenne, Wyoming, all the way down to Pueblo and stuff. So we'll have a lot of people at it. It is a bit of work. Okay, so no kidding there. We have to get things inventoried, get the flyers sent out. We have to establish pricing. Right, that's tricky because there's so many items. The one we're doing has 1,500 items that we have to price. Right. Also, it works better if you can figure out how to take credit cards. So figure that out in preparation for that. Okay. You can sell it at a train show, right? So it's a one-time event, and you got the right customer there. If it's priced right, a lot of it will go quickly. So depending on what your objective is, you can sell it there. Uh, this is a lot of work, right? I did lots of shows with Intermountain, and for us it was easy. We just brought out our trinkets, showed it. When we were done, we scooped them up, threw them in our suitcase, and left. But those folks that were selling, it's a lot of work to set up, and you're not going to sell it all, so you're going to have to take some of it home. And also, many of the municipalities where the shows are, you got to collect taxes, so you got to be prepared for that. Also, I didn't mention this earlier. It's a lot of work, right? So be prepared if that's the path you want to go. You can sell it to a broker, dealer, reseller, which is kind of what I am. As a yard sale trains, that's kind of my gig. But it's one shot and it's done, right? I mean, some will pick it up. You don't even have to ship it. It's easy and it can be least traumatic, right? So if folks have stuff they just want to get rid of, this is a kind of a quick and easy way to do it. Some of the dealers get picky about what they will accept, right? So you may still be stuck with 25 years of magazines that you got to deal with, right? It also will be the lowest price you receive. Okay. One of the estates I worked with, there was O scale, G scale collector stuff. The broker offered us $9,000. Right. We sold it on eBay for 45,000. Right. So there's a big difference, but it's quick and easy. So keep that in mind. And you can donate it, right? You call them, you pack it, deliver it, pick up, done. There may be tax benefits to you, right? Depending on how you valued it and how it's been valued and tracked, then there could be benefits from you from that. And some of the organizations that do that will assist, right? Um, the cons of it, don't ask what they will do with it because you may not like the answer, right? I have seen the trash can full of model trains because it wasn't worth it to them, the time, the effort, all of that. So this is the ultimate, just let it all go, right? So it can happen. And then there's some odd things that you run across, G scale, right? Outdoor layouts, right? So removing an outdoor layout, that's kind of a different animal. They can be sold, but usually the house goes with it, right? So you can get a, 1 acre G scale layout with 2,400 feet of track, 5 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. So you may have to see how you want to handle that one. The other items just generally process the same way as anything else, right? O scale has some complexities. If it's not pre-war collector items, then it processes pretty much the way everything else does. If it's pre-war collector items, there are complexities there you've never even heard of. Well, at least I haven't, right? I was selling a collection, and the question came in: is this the one that was made in New Jersey or Pennsylvania? Right, it's a Lionel engine of some sort, and I was like, I don't know. How you tell? And well, if you move the front truck, there's an N printed there, or there's a P. And if it's an N, it was New Jersey. If it's a P, it was Pennsylvania. And the Pennsylvania one's worth more. Really? Okay. And sure enough, we had the P. We noted that, and it sold for a lot. So there's some odd things that you have to be ready for. Also, that's the one where there's danger in emotional attachments. So be prepared for that. Was it yours, theirs, other, who had it? Was it dad's? Was granddad's? Those kinds of things. So watch for some of those emotional attachments. Many times, I tell folks that, especially the spouses, they may not be emotionally ready for what's going on. And if they show an attachment to something, I just pull it to one side and say, well, when you're ready, let me know, right? And then move on. So. Tin plate and standard gauge. I'll be honest. I've been in model trains for decades. I had never heard of standard gauge until about 5 years ago when I got this one collection involved with it, and that is a very very niche interest and audience. And stuff, and it is also very pricey stuff. So I was surprised by that. So there are things that you can run across in the model train states, the world, that are a little more trickier to deal with than what we more commonly see and stuff. And then finally, guide them to a club. Now, like I said earlier, I'm the state coordinator in my club, and we provide these services to past members. Right, that's our objective there. So, we kind of know who's up next, kind of thing. But we provide that, and the main thing is I just work with them and figure out what they want to do. Right. The one that we're working on right now, the objective was we want to get it to those people that he may have known that were part of the club or in this area and stuff. So that's the approach we've taken and stuff. So you just got to understand what their objective is. I get other members I volunteer them or told them to assist. Main thing, first thing out of the gate is inventory, right? So, we had 10 people come over on a Saturday, and we inventoried 1,500 items, turned it in kind of a pizza party. So it's kind of fun in one sense, right? So, and then once we get through that, then we go through and we start pricing things, establish values and stuff, and then we figure out the best way to sell it, right? And in this case, we're leading out with a garage sale, and then probably we'll have a broker lined up after that the garage sale is complete. So the things that we don't do is we can't sell. Our club is a nonprofit, so that impacts us. There's different types of nonprofits, but our club is set up in a way that we can't sell things to the public. So, we're not able to do that, but we help coordinate and make the other sales events happen and stuff. So, okay. So, thank you for your time. Now, open it up for questions at this point. So, I think Michelle, I think you're handling the questions today.
Yes, I am. We have a few. Um, the first one that I'm going to ask you is, how do you recommend that people value older rolling stock and buildings and electronics?
Yeah. So valuing things can be tricky because in some cases manufacturers are gone, or especially on the electronic side, or the item is discontinued, no longer available. So some of those can be more tricky. Uh, the single biggest way or easiest way to value something is through eBay, right? You can go out to eBay and just do a search for that item. They have the ability to narrow your search to completed auctions, right? And so you'll see what it actually is selling at. Somebody lists a Tyco train for $1,000. There's something off, right? So
Right.
that's
You
not a
should
good.
look for like two or three of the item and kind of take the
Exactly.
middle price. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then depending on how you're wanting to sell it will depend on what your price is going to be. If you're going to sell it on eBay and you want it to sell, you come in at a couple of dollars below that. If you want it to go to the local folks in a garage sale, you're going to go 25-30% below that and stuff to put it out. There are some specialty sites in the world of N scale and a little bit HO scale. There's a website called TroveStar, and they have all the N scale items ever produced and what they originally sold and what they recently sold for. So that can sometimes be helpful, but I do realize that not everybody is into N scale like I am. So
I like N scale too. I think what's important is if they're going to value this in their notebook, they should put the date that they
yeah,
value it on so they know that, oh, this is 2-year-old data. So I
right,
do need to research it again.
yeah. And also, if you're going to use this for tax considerations, put the price you paid for it, right? And stuff. Very few model trains are bought for the retail price, right? So got to kind of be realistic. Don't try to snooker an extra 20%, right? So what did you pay for it? And note that if you have an ongoing inventory that you're trying to maintain.
Okay. Next question is, what is the most efficient way of disposing of the collection in a speedy manner? What's the fastest way?
A broker, a
I think so
broker.
too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
Yeah, all you
Just
have to
dealing.
do is just get a list. You don't even have to price it. You just get a list of the items and you hand that to a broker. They're going to look at that. They're even if you gave them a price, they're not going to pay attention to it. They're going to be focused on what do you have and what does my business demonstrate a desire, right? So some of those brokers that are in the Midwest, they love UP, they love Santa Fe, right? Those
Right.
that are in the east, they're going to be Pennsylvania, Atlantic coast, So they're going to look at those kinds of characteristics of what you have, but the broker will be the fastest to do.
Yeah. And I found, so at the museum, we get calls all the time. We'd like to sell this layout that we have. And I like sending them to a broker because I know it's someone that I've worked with before and they have credibility. And I think the family appreciates that brokers are like, it's a business. So you're going to have that credibility with it too. So I
Absolutely.
found that that's a good way to do
Yeah.
that.
The one thing the broker can share, and I think it makes people feel a little bit better, is that whoever buys it ultimately wanted it. Okay, so it's going to go to somebody who will appreciate it in the end, right? Because the broker's not buying it just to have; they're buying it to sell it. So
So this one's a question that I wrote so that we could discuss it.
Okay.
Should you let the people and organizations that you have in mind know that you've written them down in your book? And I
I
think
think you should. I think you should so that they are prepared, right?
yes,
Unlike other charitable organizations where receiving a cash donation anonymously, works, right? But we're not talking about cash. We're talking about physical things here, and some of these physical things may not be practical for the entity that you're wanting to help out, receive or deal with, right? And there are many different organizations related to model trains that can benefit, right? So
right.
you take like the Colorado Model Railroad Museum, right? There are things that you'd be very grateful to have, and there are things that you would struggle with receiving. But then
Right.
there's youth in model railroading. They could take different things that you would not be interested in, but would benefit them and stuff.
And
That
another
I
one is that we
Mhm.
as a museum often know of a museum that would benefit more than to us. We
Absolutely.
were offered this huge brass Santa Fe collection, and I thought, well, we don't display Santa Fe, so we had to find someone it
Mhm.
fits better with, right?
Exactly.
So if you
Exactly.
let us know ahead of time, we can make that happen in a better way. And some places, like our museum, we have a legacy society, so there's actually something kind of fun with if you let them know. But even letting your friends know it's coming, the same reasons they can prepare and
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, okay, so um, the NMRA actually has an article on their website, and so I wanted to mention that if you go to nmra.org and you look up estate planning, there's actually another related article that's just another piece that's out there for people. Um, Richard, you've been a wealth of information. You and I have been working together on this
Hmm.
future project. Another question I have is there a pre-made form I can get? Well, that's what you and I are working on right now.
Yeah, and I think that any form that we make, right, and I know the form you and I will make will be just fabulous, right? But the reality is, not every form will work for everybody, right?
Correct.
Their brain don't think that way, right? And so I think it's the form is not as important as having that book, right, and putting the information in there. Now, I think if we had a template that'll help many people, right? Kind of, okay, I should have that information in there. These are the
Mhm.
elements that I need. Who made it? When did I get it? Does it have sound? Those kinds of things. Who's going to get it? Those things I think are positive. But I don't want folks to get hung up on having the right format as much as put it in the book, put it in the notebook, right? So.
Yep, put it in the book. And I personally am the person who receives the phone call from the distressed family who's crushed
Hmm.
and wants to do the best thing they can with Grandpa's railroad. And if Grandpa had just done these things, it would have alleviated so much trauma and stress for this
Yes,
family. And so,
absolutely.
cannot stress enough what you've said in this, how
Yeah.
important this is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. This is not about us as the modeler. We're done. We're dead. We're gone. Right. This is who you're leaving behind. This is what you're doing for them. And I've had many of, spouses that I started talking to and figured out they were in no shape to even begin the conversation. Right. And I
right.
said, you know what? Let me call you back in 6 months when you're ready. Right. And more often than not, they'll call me beforehand, but they appreciate that okay, we don't have to do this now, but they just didn't have a plan. They didn't know what to do. And
So
that's
they
the
have to
most
take the
important thing.
time to process and think it all out
Yep. And they're
and
dealing with other things. I mean, we think model
yeah.
trains is the universe, right? But they're dealing with things like they may have to move, they may have to sell everything, they got kids they got to deal with, and they're getting 100 different things going on at once. Model trains is not the most important thing at that particular moment. So you have to give them time.
Yeah.
So.
And another thing we should just talk about real quick is that if people have a very, very large collection and they think they're just going to donate it on, there are tax implications for your family. So please talk to somebody, talk to me or Richard. You can call us
Hmm.
because there are appraisals that have to happen for things. If your
Right.
family's going to get a good tax credit, there are things that have to happen. The IRS has a process. And so ask those questions. We're happy to answer those questions.
Yep. Yeah, and that's probably the same in every country, not just the U.S., right?
Yes.
So for those that are international, check with your estate planning folks on how that gets handled appropriately.
Okay, we have one last question that just came in.
Okay.
Are there tools available for cataloging a collection?
There have been in the past, but they've not held up. And in the sense that the company no longer is updating it and things like that. Now, the website that I referenced earlier, TroveStar, you do have the ability to create your own collection and put it out there and stuff. So there is an online version of it. My single biggest concern about that is what happens if one day TroveStar stops, right? And if you don't have that information and stuff. So I've not heard of any true inventory planning, cataloging type of system that's available. Might be a little niche and stuff. Quite
Well,
honestly,
I
Excel
can say,
spreadsheet does plenty good.
I was going to say, there's cataloging software, but it's expensive, and you're probably not going to want to go to the expense of true cataloging software.
Right.
But an Excel spreadsheet goes a long ways. I agree. I think that's the answer.
The thing about the Excel spreadsheet is that whoever gets it, they can manipulate it easily, right?
Yeah, and you can even go to a Google spreadsheet, right? Like you can
Yes.
use a free software.
You can use a free one. Absolutely. Yeah. Google Sheets is called. Yeah. But just make sure that somebody knows how to get to it. That once again is dependent on user IDs and passwords. So make sure that somebody else besides you can access it and stuff. So.
Right. And that should be part of your bigger estate plan, right? I mean, that should be part of everybody's bigger estate plan. So, Richard, thank you for talking to us about this today.
You bet.
This is really important. I can't stress it enough for those watching. This is really important. So thank you for being with us today. Just want to remind everybody that next month's NMRAx will be on November 23rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. And thank you for watching with us today.
Thank you all.